the great swordsman of Marvel. Hey! Look who's back for more adventures. We love having you here to continue this story that keeps us all awake. Important note, all of this is pure fiction, so don't try any techniques you hear here in real life. Your neighbor might call the cops. This amazing novel and all its rights belong to the original author. We're just the ones giving it voice and drama. Are you enjoying the show? Prove it by subscribing to our YouTube channel and leaving that like that motivates us so much. And if you want VIP access to exclusive content, our Patreon is waiting with things you won't find anywhere else. Chapter 326 Strength. He might not have wanted to clarify things at this time, but this person probably knew very well that he couldn't beat him. That's why, before finding someone to help him defeat Chen Feng, he didn't care what he might do to anger Chen Feng. He hadn't expected to come here to bully this person, only to be seen by Chen Feng. From the relationship between Chen Feng and that person back then, he actually felt that Chen Feng and this person had a decent relationship. However, when he came here several times and found that Chen Feng hadn't come, he assumed that Chen Feng and this person had just met by chance and didn't consider this person a friend. After all, he felt that Chen Feng's strength was so great that it was reasonable for him to consider this group of people as friends, so he didn't say anything more. Now, Chen Feng's words made him very angry, but he knew very well that Chen Feng's strength was far beyond his ability to defeat, so he continued to speak to him. I can defeat you right now, so why would I bully your friend? Don't bring this up again. Don't beg me to let you off the hook after the written test starts. Even if you do, I won't do it now. He knew perfectly well that he couldn't beat Chen Feng, but with so many people around, he couldn't just say it out loud. He could only force himself to say it now. Chen Feng just smiled at him again. He knew exactly what he was thinking, but he didn't want to argue with him. He just didn't want to talk about it now. He looked at the man again, not knowing what he wanted to say next. But this matter needed to be resolved now, so he just looked at him again and thought about what was going on. Chen Feng also glanced at the man. He wasn't sure what the man had done, but there were indeed things that needed to be resolved at this moment. He looked at the man again, realizing he needed to show him his true strength. This was to prevent the seemingly weak ninja from believing no one could defeat him. Chen Feng then moved forward a little more. The ninja, seeing this, became somewhat afraid. He certainly thought Chen Feng was powerful, but he didn't dare to send his men out directly. I said I wanted to challenge you to another match back then, but of course, I didn't necessarily have to do it now. I could tell your strength wasn't that great, so I didn't bother with it then. Why do you think I'm afraid to deal with you now that I didn't bother with it? Chen Feng said this to him, then moved closer to the ninja. The ninja next to Chen Feng was surprised by what he said. He hadn't expected Chen Feng to say that so directly, and from Chen Feng's words, it seemed that Chen Feng had let him go back then. He had thought that was Chen Feng's full strength then, but it seemed that he hadn't used his full strength this time, and instead let the person in front of him go. But why did he do that now? He found this strange. But judging from Chen Feng's current demeanor, he wasn't planning to let the ninja off so easily. The ninja was indeed quite formidable, although he knew he was no match for Chen Feng and understood his own limitations, he still refused to repeat himself. Instead, he looked at Chen Feng again. What gives you the right to say these things now? Everyone saw me let you go back then. To say this in front of them now seems shameless, or do you want to be laughed at again? He directly addressed Chen Feng, not believing Chen Feng would dare say anything more. Chen Feng simply smiled at him, not wanting to say anything more, but judging from the ninja's expression, it seemed he really wanted him to teach him a lesson. So Chen Feng approached him again at this moment, and the ninja, seeing Yu Shen's expression, clearly understood that he had truly angered him this time. Now, in front of so many people, he had already said what he had said before. He cared most about himself and how others perceived him. So how could he possibly give in now? He just kept glancing at him, not wanting to say anything more. Chen Feng, on the other hand, simply smiled at him again. He wasn't unaware of what the man was thinking, he had simply chosen not to argue with him before. Don't get close to him again now, because of me. His strength is indeed stronger than before, which I noticed then. Don't get close to him now, otherwise, if you can't defeat him, and this matter gets you blamed, I'll be embarrassed. The man who had previously helped Chen Feng stepped forward and pulled him aside, not wanting Chen Feng to get too close at this moment, as he didn't want Chen Feng to encounter any further danger. However, Chen Feng simply smiled at him again, feeling that this man didn't need to do these things now. Of course, Chen Feng knew that he was saying these things to prevent Chen Feng from risking offending this man, but when Chen Feng was about to do something, how could he possibly consider this man's thoughts? He simply looked at him again, smiled, and then said, "You don't need to think about these things now. Since I dared to come to him now, it means I'm not afraid of him. I have the ability to defeat him. So don't think that everything has to be resolved right now before telling us what to do." He smiled at him again, and he himself found it strange that Chen Feng was saying these things. Chen Feng didn't seem willing to explain, which puzzled him. He wondered what Chen Feng was thinking. Chen Feng then walked towards the ninja again. He needed to deal with him first, otherwise, who knew what this person might do next? He didn't want to talk to him much, but some things needed to be resolved. He looked at him again, thought for a moment, and then spoke. "I think our battle can begin now. I think you should go back now. Even if you were injured in the fight before, it shouldn't matter now. After all, he wasn't injured. Or are you going to show that your strength is inferior to his?" Du Chen looked at the man and spoke to him at that moment. He didn't know what the man was going to say next, but judging from the man's expression, he knew that this kind of person was most unwilling to be looked down upon at this time. That was why he suddenly said those things to him. The reason he said those things was just for this purpose. After all, whether this matter was easy or difficult, it was still challenging. He felt that he had to be very careful, otherwise it would be too dangerous and uncertain. Sure enough, just as Chen Feng thought, after he said those words, the ninja's expression immediately changed. Just as Chen Feng thought, he really didn't want to become like this at this moment. Du Chen just looked at him and smiled. He wanted to see if he could say anything else to him at this moment, so he looked at him again. When the ninja heard Chen Feng ask him to fight him here, he was very surprised. He didn't expect Chen Feng to be like this because of this matter. He now felt that Chen Feng might have gone mad. After all, this wasn't something that could be done casually at this time. He looked at Chen Feng again, unsure of what he was thinking. He felt that Chen Feng should know exactly what kind of strength these people possessed, but he didn't say anything else because he also felt that Chen Feng needed to understand these matters. Looking at his expression, which now seemed somewhat frightening, he continued, "I think some people should learn more about these things now. Do you really think that no one here dares to deal with you right now? If you really anger me, there are people here who can take care of you at any time. You'd better understand this matter." Chapter 327 Combat Power. Chen Feng found the threat even more intriguing. It had been a while since he'd been threatened like this, so he looked at the man again. He didn't know what the man was thinking, but whatever he said, he wasn't going to let him off so easily. Otherwise, he'd know what to do. It wasn't just to clarify things with this man, nor to help the person who had pulled him into hiding. That was all. He was doing this because he didn't want any further entanglement with this ninja, and he didn't want others to think he had gotten away with it. So he looked at him again, smiled, unsure of his thoughts, but he knew how to deal with him. Even if they attacked now, Chen Feng was certain he couldn't possibly win, otherwise, what would he be doing at this moment? Since that's the case, I won't say anything more to you now. You just need to do as I say, and you'll succeed. I said I'd defeat you now, and you have to do it right now. As for the mechanisms, I won't go into details. The person who heard Chen Feng's words became even angrier. How could he possibly listen to what they said? He was always expected to listen to them, which only fueled his anger. Just then, someone came looking for him. It was the ninja who had come to see the one with Chen Feng. He hesitated, wondering if he should talk to Chen Feng and take him back. After all, Chen Feng couldn't afford to fight now. Offending this person could lead to retaliation. This person was capable of anything, and he didn't know what kind of person he was yet. That's why he didn't acknowledge Chen Feng and only came to him now, facing further danger. They wanted Chen Feng to take them back at this moment, but Chen Feng just smiled at them again. Chen Feng knew very well what he wanted to say when he arrived, but they obviously couldn't do as he was told right now. No matter what he said, if he said he would deal with these people at this time, he would definitely deal with them right now. So they just looked at them again. Chen Feng looked at them again. He knew very well that offending this ninja might have affected the forces behind him, but he didn't know what the system was for when he came here. He looked at them again and found that the system required him to deal with these ninjas at this time, which Chen Feng found a bit strange. He really found it strange that the system would make such a request at this time, but since it had already been made, he had to do as the system said. There was really no other way at this point, so they felt a bit helpless. Chen Feng then stepped forward. Since they had already decided to occupy this place, they needed to ensure the villagers weren't harmed while they were in the car. The sudden fight had clearly been a problem, and he realized that no matter what they did, the situation was unsolvable. He glanced at them again, but didn't say anything more, only looking at the ninja to see if he dared to agree. Yi Shen had clearly sensed fear in the ninja's words, and these things weren't easily found. Therefore, he felt he needed to reconsider, as the situation was complex and not easily resolved. Chen Feng looked at him, unsure if he dared to fight, and wanted to test his resolve. However, the ninja also kept an eye on Chen Feng, finding it strange that the man seemed completely unafraid. Since you want to fight me now, then let's make this our battlefield right now. If you're not afraid, do as I say right now. Otherwise, we won't be able to stay here any longer. He said this to the person who had secretly come to him to inquire about the matter. The person understood that Lushan was not someone they could afford to offend, but things had already come to this point. Even if they pleaded with Chen Feng, this person clearly wouldn't let them go now. Although they were angry about this, they had to think about how to resolve the situation. They had to find a way to solve it now, no matter what. When Chen Feng challenged the ninja to fight, the ninja was somewhat surprised. Chen Feng dared to say such things at this time, but he wasn't sure how to respond. Chen Feng's strength was indeed greater than he had imagined, yet he also remembered receiving something from the organization. The reason so many members of the organization wanted to fight him wasn't for any other reason than that a powerful figure within the organization was willing to help him. He had gone to that person, who had given him something. So, he then said to Chen Feng, since you've said this, I can fight you. But if you lose, you must take this person and never appear here again. Otherwise, don't blame me. I won't be polite now. We can fight anywhere, I won't mention it in the community group. As he said this, he glanced at Chen Feng again, seemingly looking down on him. Chen Feng was unaware of this, he had already told him clearly before, so how could he dare to think that way now? Chen Feng looked at him, smiled, and then said, since that's the case, let's not fight in the village anymore, to avoid causing any trouble. The others can go in another direction. We'll fight outside the village now. There are ninjas here, and you have ninjas there who can handle things. The ninja, upon hearing this, simply smiled at Chen Feng. He didn't care what Chen Feng thought, he was happy as long as he could defeat Chen Feng. So, he led Chen Feng in another direction, determined to defeat him this time. Because this village was relatively close to their side, these people were willing to believe what he said at this time. However, if he lost to Chen Feng here, it would definitely affect the status of these people here. Therefore, he couldn't afford to lose to Chen Feng at this time, nor did he dare to do so. If he were to lose to Chen Feng again at this time, someone would definitely not let him go. As for who that person was, he himself knew very well that the person willing to help him was very likely the one who would directly eliminate him. So, at this moment, he led Chen Feng in another direction. When he brought Chen Feng to the place where they were going to fight again, he looked at Chen Feng and smiled at this person. It seemed that he had chosen the place most likely to help him fight. However, Chen Feng didn't want him to be so happy at this moment, so he said to him, you just mentioned the place of battle. If you're going to choose now, why didn't you ask me where I wanted to fight before coming here? Moreover, this place can make you even stronger at this moment. It seems you're just like that. Chen Feng smiled at him again at this moment. Hearing what Chen Feng said, the man was actually very angry, but what could he do at this time? He didn't expect Chen Feng to say this so directly. He looked at him, and of course, some people were also looking at him at this moment, already somewhat unhappy. But he still had to fight at this moment. He thought that Chen Feng could choose another place so that he could resolve this matter. When he was about to say this, Chen Feng just looked at him again, smiled, and said, Chapter 328 Inspiration. Unlike you, I don't need to choose a specific place to fight at this time. Since it's already decided, we'll fight here. Let's begin now. All of you, please keep your distance. I don't want to hurt anyone at this moment. Now, let me see just how strong you really are. Chen Feng could tell from this man's expression that he dared to fight him at this time because he had obtained something that could make him stronger, but he wasn't sure how much stronger it would make him, which was why he hadn't dared to fight him earlier. As for why he dared to do this now, it seemed that he was angered by Chen Feng's words back then. Thinking of this, Chen Feng just smiled again. He didn't care what this man was thinking at this moment. As long as he could defeat him, in his opinion, there was nothing else to deal with. Who was watching at this moment? He glanced at him again, not wanting to say anything more. Defeating him was all that mattered. During their fight, the ninja had suddenly vanished. Chen Feng knew perfectly well that it was his pajamas, and the sudden attack had made him think twice. I thought you'd gained some newfound strength, but it turns out you're nothing special. You think hiding here will stop me? Don't think about that now. Let me see what you're really made of. Don't let me look down on you again, Chen Feng said directly, not wanting to say anything more to this person. He just wanted to finish him off. The ninja glared at Yushin with hatred. He hadn't expected Chen Feng to be so powerful, or perhaps he hadn't even used his full strength during the previous fight. It was precisely because of this that he used the item given to him by that person at this moment, in a direction unseen by others. He was told it would make him stronger, and he had indeed felt the effects after using it. He looked at Chen Feng with a touch of smugness. He could now directly eliminate the enemy. He was somewhat pleased with himself. The battle between Chen Feng and the ninja began at this moment, but he had no intention of letting him go. He knew this person well and had no intention of letting him go at this time. It was precisely because of this that he had to engage in this battle. He was certain he could defeat him, but judging from his appearance, he must have obtained something from someone that could make him stronger, otherwise, he wouldn't be in his current state. Just as he was thinking about this, suddenly the ninja disappeared from his sight again. Was he possibly in danger? That ninja seemed very powerful. I've never seen anyone with such strength before. Since he was so powerful, was Chen Feng really in danger? I didn't want him to encounter such danger at this moment. The person who had helped Chen Feng before also arrived at the ninja's side. This was the only ninja he could find, and he wanted to learn from him about a matter, to understand if Chen Feng could truly defeat the ninja at this moment. He didn't dare to say directly that he could do it. But Chen Feng had indeed done it before, something he hadn't expected and was quite surprised by. The ninja simply looked at him again. He wasn't unaware of Chen Feng's fear. Indeed, Chen Feng might be in danger. This person's strength was clearly greater than they had imagined. His fear wasn't a big deal, but Chen Feng wasn't the type to easily risk danger. He smiled at him again. He smiled back, though he didn't know what Chen Feng wanted to say. But it was simply out of fear that Chen Feng might be in danger again. Now that their battle had begun, he looked at him and said something. Don't think about these things now. I think Chen Feng dared to fight him at this time, so he must have already thought of something. You don't need to think about these things now. I'll think about it some more, and I'm sure I'll find a way to help him solve these problems. Hearing these words, the man seemed a little hesitant. But since he had already said that, he must have his reasons. He looked at them again. Since he said he was willing to help Chen Feng at this time, with his strength, there was no need for him to lie to him. He didn't want Chen Feng to be in danger because of him. He knew very well that Chen Feng was fighting this person because he had said he would resolve the matter at this time. Chen Feng didn't want him to be in danger because of him, which was why he was here. But he felt somewhat helpless because of this matter. But no matter what, Chen Feng was going to be in danger to help him. So he stayed here and watched them. He wanted to see how he would deal with that person because he didn't want Chen Feng to be in danger. In the end, he just thought about it again and then stayed by his side. Chen Feng, on the other hand, didn't say anything more to him at this time. He did indeed feel the ninja disappear before his eyes, but he simply couldn't see where he was now. So, just as the ninja, thinking he had already dealt with Yushin, was about to attack, Chen Feng suddenly made a move in his direction. The ninja was startled for a moment, then immediately dodged. Chen Feng, seeing this, simply smiled again. He was somewhat surprised. The ninja was indeed slightly stronger than he had expected, but in Chen Feng's opinion, it wasn't that much more powerful. So, he just smiled again and then spoke to the ninja. It seems your strength is indeed slightly stronger than I thought. Let me see what other strength you have now. Don't let me look down on you. Yes, after all, someone like you isn't anything special. As he said this, he chuckled again. He hadn't intended to say anything more to this person, but suddenly attacked the ninja again. The ninja, stunned by Chen Feng's attack, immediately tried to block it, only to discover that Chen Feng's strength was far greater than he had anticipated. He was somewhat surprised. He immediately dodged, not wanting to be defeated by Chen Feng's thin air, but was surprised to see that Chen Feng's strength was even greater than when they had met before. This meant that he hadn't used his full power in their previous encounter. It was only now that he realized Chen Feng's strength was far greater than he had imagined. Now let me see what other strength you have left. Don't blame me for being impolite. I didn't want to finish you off like this, but seeing your current state, it's clear you want to fight me now. And since you proposed this fight, I have no choice but to give you this one. As Chen Feng finished speaking, he smiled at him again, then suddenly charged towards him. The man was stunned, but now that he had used those things, the things that person had given him to make him stronger, some of which he hadn't dared to use before, he now felt he had to. However, thinking about it, if he used those things against Chen Feng now, he would definitely be ridiculed by everyone when he got back, and he didn't want that. So, he decided to try it now. If he could defeat Chen Feng, he could resolve the matter no matter what. The young man hadn't dared to use those things in the first place because he knew they were dangerous, but now it seemed he was about to lose to Chen Feng. He didn't want to encounter such a thing again, so after only a moment's hesitation, he took out those things again. He figured he might as well try them now. It wasn't a difficult task. Chen Feng wasn't particularly concerned about the fight. In his opinion, no matter what this person did, he couldn't possibly defeat him. He simply looked at the man again, wanting to see what other moves he could use to defeat him at this moment. The ninja was furious, but Chen Feng just stared at him. The ninja also sensed the contemptuous expression on Chen Feng's face. He clearly looked down on him. So, after some thought, and despite his fear, he still used the power-activating device. End of chapter 329. How could he suddenly become so much stronger at this moment? Could Gang O have used something during that move? But judging from his appearance, that thing was probably meant to injure him. Chen Feng wondered what this person was thinking. He genuinely found this strange. Why would he do something like that? A ninja doing something like this really puzzled him. Lu Cheng didn't say much on the surface, but he was indeed wondering what Gang O had used to suddenly become so powerful that it surprised Chen Feng. He only felt a little surprised, nothing more. In Chen Feng's view, it was simply a matter of dealing with this person again. So he just glanced at him again. When the person attacked him again, the ninja looked at Chen Feng smugly and shouted loudly at him. I'll repay you for all the humiliation you caused me before. You need to find out who you really are, who you can mess with, and who you can't. Do you really think I have no way to deal with you? He smiled smugly at him, knowing he really needed to find a way to get rid of Chen Feng. He didn't want him to continue being so smug in front of him. But you also need to find out about other things, whether any of the people who came with you have noticed anything. Chen Feng smiled as he said this, only glancing at the man again, unsure of his thoughts. Judging from his expression, he seemed afraid the man would tell others about this, so Chen Feng only glanced at him again. He didn't say anything more, he had said what needed to be said. Seeing the man's fear because of this, Chen Feng didn't tell him what he was planning. He felt that making the man feel scared would stop him from doing such a thing again, because this matter was indeed too dangerous. If it were just the ninja himself in danger, Chen Feng obviously wouldn't stop him. But what the ninja was doing was putting everyone there in danger with him, which angered Chen Feng. That's why he had to stop him earlier, preventing him from continuing the fight. That's why Chen Feng didn't act that way then. He didn't intend to let the man go, nor did he intend to harm him directly. So he simply watched him explain things clearly. The others were waiting for Chen Feng to resolve the situation, and Chen Feng, watching them, hadn't expected them to help him, nor had he considered their words. Of course, while they called it help, Chen Feng knew there was no other reason. They were simply willing to entrust these things to him. So Chen Feng thought for a moment, and then looked at the person he had defeated. That ninja seemed unwilling to listen to Chen Feng's words, but Chen Feng could sense that if he ordered him now, and the ninja refused to listen, he would be in danger. Thinking this, he looked in that direction. As expected, Chen Feng immediately saw what he wanted to know. He saw someone secretly hiding there, seemingly trying to figure out what was going on. However, Chen Feng immediately used the ninja behind him to shield the person from seeing his intentions. I won't say anything more to you now. You'd better not let me find out you're doing this again, or don't blame me for being impolite. I have some things to take care of. I won't talk to you anymore, you can go back now. Chen Feng just smiled at him again and didn't say anything more, instead heading in another direction. He didn't tell him about this matter, because it wasn't necessary, and he smiled smugly. Chen Feng didn't tell this person about this matter, but he was very clear about one thing: if this person lost to him this time and also used that kind of thing, like the one he had just seen, then if they really used it, he would be in danger at this moment. He glanced at the man again, noticing his repeated provocations. Shen still wanted to tell him about it, since the man hadn't done anything wrong. Chen Feng couldn't just stand by and watch him face danger, so he hesitated slightly but still approached the man again. He had something to tell him. The battle ended with Chen Feng's victory. Nothing else seemed to happen, except for the ninja who had lost to Chen Feng. He didn't understand what had happened, but he acknowledged his defeat. Chen Feng looked at the ninja again. He had indeed unleashed powerful strength, but there was a glaring weakness that Chen Feng had spotted. Having found the weakness, he attacked directly, defeating the ninja. Chen Feng then spoke to the ninja. Judging from your appearance, I thought you wouldn't stoop to such despicable methods to win. Now it seems I overestimated you. To win, you'd do anything. You really should reflect on what you've done this time. Don't be upset. Chen Feng just stared at him. He had set up a barrier around them during their fight, so no one could detect what they were doing. Now, seeing Chen Feng talking to him, they only assumed Chen Feng was declaring his victory. The ninja looked at Chen Feng in disbelief. When did you discover I used this to win? I used it to enhance my power. I don't think anyone could see how you did it. Why can't it be that my own power suddenly increased? Why are you suspecting I used something else? Actually, judging from Chen Feng's expression, he understood that Chen Feng had already confirmed it but didn't want to admit it, so he looked at Chen Feng and tried to argue again. But Chen Feng was a man who had already confirmed it. How could he possibly be deceiving others? Looking at him, his expression suddenly turned cold. He was just smiling at him a moment ago, but suddenly he changed his tune like this. He found it strange. What was wrong with Chen Feng? But judging from his expression, he must be very angry. It was just that Chen Feng almost lost to him just now. Thinking of this, he felt very happy. He looked at Chen Feng and smiled triumphantly. Then he looked at Chen Feng and thought he must be angry. You're so angry now simply because you almost lost to me just now. If it weren't for that, why would you be so angry? I think that's all. You say I'm willing to do anything to win, but aren't you the same? Why is your strength suddenly so much stronger than before? He looked at Chen Feng, feeling that Chen Feng's strength was much greater than when he had encountered him before, and also felt that Chen Feng must have used other methods. He looked at Chen Feng, but Chen Feng still had the same expression as before, looking at him, and then suddenly laughed, his smile filled with sarcasm as he looked at this person. Chen Feng looked at him with sarcasm, not understanding why he had such thoughts, but he was unwilling to use such despicable methods, and he couldn't do such a thing. Looking at his current smug expression, he didn't hesitate any longer, and didn't want to say any more. If he wanted to resolve this matter first, he continued, you still think that I used all my strength before? Let me tell you the truth. I didn't use all my strength to fight you. Your strength is nothing special in my eyes. Only you would be willing to do such a thing. I have never stooped to using such despicable methods to win. He watched as he told him everything, not caring what the other person was thinking. During their match, the ninja stood with the person who had helped Chen Feng before. The person who had helped him was just an ordinary person, and he was more afraid than the ninja. He thought the battle wasn't over yet. When they watched other people fight, many things were resolved immediately afterward, and they didn't realize what was going on. Or, after the match, they had to leave the arena immediately and couldn't stay there like Chen Feng. So they thought Chen Feng definitely hadn't won yet. He can't beat him yet. Maybe we should stop him from fighting him. Otherwise, it would be bad if he were defeated. I don't want him to be defeated. He's the strongest person I've ever met. I don't want him to encounter such a thing. Should we think of a way to help Chen Feng? I think that person suddenly became very strong. The ninja beside him, upon hearing this, first smiled at him, clearly understanding why he thought that way. These people probably hadn't considered that some ninjas could use something to suddenly increase their power. Perhaps this person had used such a thing. Otherwise, how could he be like this? He looked at him, smiled, and although he didn't understand what he was thinking, since the matter was already resolved and Chen Feng had already beaten him, there was no need for him to reveal these things. He wanted to prevent this ninja from being ridiculed by these people, so he looked at the ordinary person. Chapter 330 Powerful. It's nothing serious, they just have some things to say. In a ninja battle, someone like Chen Feng who wins outright can talk to him about other things. What they actually say is beyond our understanding. You don't need to worry anymore. Chen Feng has already won, you can talk to him about it when he comes down. Hearing this, they stopped talking. Chen Feng then looked at the ninja he had defeated. He didn't really understand how to persuade him, but the ninja's actions made Chen Feng feel helpless. He hadn't expected the man to become like this, it was something he hadn't anticipated. He had indeed considered helping him, but seeing him now, it seemed he believed Chen Feng had used such methods. He disdained such things and said he wouldn't do it. The ninja stared at Chen Feng, feeling he was being lied to, and just stared at him. Chen Feng didn't want to say anything more to him, nor was there any need to. The thing he was using this time was already enough to keep him from growing any stronger. He could only watch as his companions became stronger than him. He couldn't do anything about it. He just watched, not telling the ninja anything. Perhaps it was better to let him understand things himself, otherwise, since the ninja wouldn't believe him anyway, what was the point of telling him? So Chen Feng just watched. After finishing his conversation with the ninja, Chen Feng didn't want to pay him any more attention and walked towards the platform below. Just as they were about to fight, this platform suddenly appeared below. He figured it was because there must be many people fighting here, the so-called ninjas here were all quite warlike. He walked down, and the ordinary man walked towards him happily. He was happier than anyone else to confirm that Chen Feng hadn't been attacked, which was why he came to him. He looked at Chen Feng with some hesitation, because he was just an ordinary person now, and Chen Feng might have already abandoned him. I have something to tell you. Like how he wants to get rid of you now, in their eyes you're both just weaklings. So I want to know something from you, are you willing to become stronger right now? If I said I could make you very strong, would you be willing to come with me somewhere else first? Chen Feng said this because he knew very well that the system had told him this task, and there would definitely be other things he needed to do afterward. He would definitely need to take this person elsewhere. Only in battle could he become stronger. Of course, he couldn't stay in this place any longer. The ordinary person was stunned when he heard this. Actually, it wasn't like no one here had come looking for him. Everyone here had the potential to become a ninja, it just depended on whether they had the ability. At that time, many people had already determined that he couldn't become a powerful ninja. Of course I'm happy to hear you say that. I'm not unaware that you want to help me at this time, but many people have already said that I can't become a powerful ninja. It's impossible. Please don't say these things to me anymore, otherwise I'll really be unhappy about it. Those around him, presumably his companions, were surprised by this. This was a request Chen Feng had made to him. Chen Feng was so powerful, in their eyes, Du Chun was truly a formidable ninja. Why would he refuse? They looked at him, wanting to say something else. You don't need to think about these things now. Chen Feng said. Since I said this, I must have my reasons. Since I mentioned making you stronger, I certainly have a way to make you very strong. It just depends on whether you're willing to come with me. This matter might be dangerous, and I need to make it clear to you. Chen Feng said this to him. Whether he was willing to go with him depended on his own thoughts. He wasn't saying this to force him to accept the system's task, he was only considering whether it was possible to complete it. If he didn't want to do it, the system wouldn't be able to complete the task, and he wouldn't be angry about it. But Chen Feng felt that he was very likely to agree. He was just unsure if he could truly become stronger. He was only worried that Chen Feng was deliberately deceiving him. Chen Feng stayed here watching him, wanting to understand his true thoughts. Although the system said it would make this person stronger and assigned this task to Chen Feng also needed to understand the person's thoughts. He couldn't force him to do it. If he were forced, the person wouldn't become stronger. Moreover, Chen Feng was worried about other people with systems. They posed a real threat. He could learn these things through the system, so why couldn't other system users? Perhaps some already knew who he was and even wanted to eliminate him. He was unaware of this. Thinking about this, he felt somewhat helpless, but no matter what he thought, he couldn't force this person to do the task. The ordinary person hesitated, wondering if Chen Feng was telling the truth. But when he saw Chen Feng's expression, he felt there was no need for him to lie. Even if Chen Feng wanted to lie, he wouldn't gain anything from it. So, still unsure, he continued to tell Chen Feng what he was saying. If it's true, as you say, that I can become stronger, then I'm willing to go with you. No matter what dangers we encounter, I'm willing to go with you. As long as it makes me stronger, I'll do it. Whatever you ask me to do, as long as it doesn't harm others, I'll do it. He said this to Chen Feng, which didn't surprise him. He had already sensed this when he arrived. These people here liked strength even more than he thought. In their eyes, anything was acceptable as long as it made them stronger. Chen Feng neither said he liked this idea nor refused him. Looking at our Yuo, Lu Chen had already discerned that he only wanted to become stronger and had no intention of harming others, so Chen Feng didn't hesitate any longer. He said to our Yuo, "You can go and prepare. I'll take you somewhere else to make you stronger. I think you don't want to be bullied like this anymore. As for that kind of person, I'll tell you why he suddenly became like this. You probably want to know about that too. I could tell from your expression." Chen Feng glanced at the ordinary man, and from his expression, he knew he wanted to know more. The man with a sound communication ability then hurriedly ran off. Chen Feng looked at him, feeling somewhat helpless. He didn't even know the man's name. He had originally planned to ask him about it when he came to find him. But since he didn't know much about the matter yet, he could only wait and see. The ninja who had come with Chen Feng looked at him strangely. Although he hadn't found the man particularly remarkable while talking to him, he still felt his status was too low. In their view, a ninja could become more powerful. But this man was just an ordinary person, yet Chen Feng wanted him to train with him. Looking at the man, he knew he didn't possess much strength and couldn't possibly become stronger. It was precisely because he couldn't become a benevolent person, yet Chen Feng had told him this, that he felt somewhat helpless. If he later discovered these things weren't true, he would have to turn against Chen Feng. He didn't bring up these matters, only glancing at him and then suddenly smiling. He wanted to see what Chen Feng was thinking next. Chen Feng simply finished speaking and waited for him to make his own decision. Whether he was willing to cultivate with him depended on his own thoughts. He simply watched as the Lu Shi system assigned him this task, and he had no choice but to try it, since this was a task he had never taken on before. At this moment, Lu Shi looked at Chen Feng, while the ninja named Wang Zai, who had helped him, watched them both. What were they thinking? He didn't know. He had no idea what they were thinking. Of course, Chen Feng's strength did surprise him. The person who had used that thing had become so powerful that even he was astonished. You can think about whether or not to agree to his request. Even with your current strength, I can't be sure if you can truly become very powerful. But Chen Feng has already surprised me. That ninja just now used something that allowed him to suddenly become powerful. Even I couldn't possibly defeat him at this moment. He told Lu Shi this. Wang Zai came to Lu Shi's side. Of course, Wang Zai was willing to tell Lu Shi this because he could see what Chen Feng wanted to do. He could see that Chen Feng really wanted this person to become stronger with him, although he didn't yet understand Chen Feng's true motives for doing this at this time. If you are listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means it was downloaded and re-uploaded without effort. We warmly invite you to visit our channel, Fanfic World. There you will find the original version of this story and many other novels of various genres. We look forward to seeing you dive into a world of incredible novels. Chapter 331 Powerful Ninja. However, he was willing to help Chen Feng, not for any other reason than that if Chen Feng owed him this favor, he could simply ask Chen Feng for help if his village ever needed it, and Chen Feng would definitely be willing to help him resolve those issues. He was certain of that at this moment. He didn't know why he was so sure, but judging from Chen Feng's demeanor, he wasn't the kind of person who would accept help without giving anything in return. He told him this, but the other person hesitated upon hearing this. After a moment of hesitation, he looked at Chen Feng again as he stood before him. Can you really make me stronger? If so, I'm willing to follow you. No matter what we have to do next, I'm willing to do it. I'm willing to solve everything you've said, as long as you can make me stronger, I'm willing. I don't want the people around me to encounter any danger because of me. He watched as Chen Feng spoke to him, and Chen Feng was stunned. He knew very well that the world of Naruto was different from the one he knew. In the world he was familiar with, he had never heard of any powerful figures there. It seemed that their place was too remote, or perhaps these people simply didn't exist. Of course, he didn't say much more now. He had many things to deal with. If it really was the world of Naruto, then he felt that there should at least be Uchiha people. Since he hadn't encountered them yet, he needed to find out what was going on. Was it because of the appearance of people with systems like these? Chen Feng thought this way not for any other reason than that this possibility did exist. If people with such systems suddenly appeared somewhere and did something, it could very well affect the situation here, and possibly even the people who were supposed to be there. These are all possibilities, so he didn't say anything else. There are many things that need to be resolved. Of course, he hasn't told them yet because he needs to find out more about this matter. He needs to find out more about these things he hasn't mentioned. What he needs to do now is to complete the system's task and find out who his enemies are. This is something he must know. If there are other enemies, he doesn't want to have any impulsive dealings with them, but this matter must be resolved. Now that he heard Lu Shi was willing to agree to this, he took a liking to him. Then he smiled at Lu Shi and said, "Since that's the case, you can go and tell the people around you that I don't want you to come with me to Wang Zai's place. I'm going to take you to many places. Only by going to those places can you make yourself stronger. Staying in one place all the time is impossible." He simply told him that, and Lu Shi smiled at Chen Feng. He was willing to believe Chen Feng. Whatever Chen Feng said, he was willing to believe. After all, Chen Feng couldn't possibly do anything to harm him again. He just needed to tell others about it. Chen Feng didn't care anymore. He wasn't sure if Li Zu would mind what he had said, but since he had already said it, he didn't hesitate any longer. The matter was already resolved, and Chen Feng felt happier. Now that Li Zu had agreed, it meant he had completed the task assigned by the system. So Chen Feng smiled happily. Although he didn't say much more, since the matter was resolved, he simply told the system, "Now that I've completed the first task you gave me, shouldn't you also tell me what I want to know? Why haven't I heard anyone here mention anything about the Uchiha clan? Someone here should know about this, don't tell me they don't." Chen Feng directly told them this, and of course, they still found it a bit strange. They needed to think about what was going on, but right now Chen Feng needed to find a way to resolve other matters, so he just looked at these people without saying anything more. As for Wang Zai, there were still some things to discuss with him later. The system had given him some things, saying that ninjas could use them. He had never used ninjutsu before, and the system hadn't yet told him how to handle matters related to numbers, so of course he couldn't do that. However, if Lu Shi really does cultivate with him, then the system should give him something like this. Otherwise, since he already said he wanted to make him stronger, how could he help him? He couldn't possibly use the cultivation methods from the places he'd been before. These methods weren't necessarily applicable here. It was only because of the system that these things were possible, but Lu Shi was different. Lu Shi quickly packed everything up and came to find Chen Feng. He genuinely wanted to become very strong. It was a strange thing about him, those around him weren't always getting hurt because of him. He didn't actually have any other identity, yet he frequently caused harm to those around him. He felt helpless about this and wanted to resolve it. All of this was because people were always attacking him, and those around him always got hurt trying to protect him. So now that Chen Feng said he could make him stronger, he was very happy because he felt that once he was strong, no one would dare to harm those around him anymore. "Since you've decided to stay with me, you can cultivate with me. I need to make you stronger, and I think you feel the same way. You don't want the people around you to get hurt, which is why you're doing this. I understand all of this, so you don't need to hesitate." Chen Feng smiled at him as he said this. He knew exactly what he was thinking, he could tell from his expression. Just tell him directly. Of course, Chen Feng needed to return to where he was staying in Wang Zai's village. He had left some things there. "You're coming with me to Wang Zai's place. I still have some things there. After I resolve this matter, you can travel with me. This might be very dangerous, so I want you to understand first. If we encounter danger, being afraid then won't help." He simply told him this directly. Lu Shi smiled at him upon hearing this. Having made his decision, he had no regrets. Chen Feng could see that Lu Shi was indeed a very capable person, so he led him onward. Wang Zai glanced at Chen Feng, seemingly lost in thought, so Chen Feng didn't object. Chen Feng then packed up all his belongings and was about to deal with other matters when he noticed someone had arrived. He looked over in surprise and saw it was Wang Zai. He had also come at this time. "I haven't been able to advance my cultivation level, which I find strange. After hearing what you said, I think it's probably because I haven't had enough experience. Since that's the case, why don't I travel with you this time? You wouldn't mind, would you?" Hearing this, Chen Feng smiled. Although he had only known Wang Zai for a short time, he liked him very much. He didn't think it was a big deal for Wang Zai to want to travel with him. So the group set off together towards their destination. "Are there any powerful ninjas around here? Or do you know of any ninjas who are very strong? Judging from your appearance, you all seem to be quite powerful. And the person I met before did have some considerable strength. So tell me what's going on," He looked at him and smiled, unsure if Chen Feng was willing to tell him these things. However, upon hearing Chen Feng's words, Wang Zai chuckled. He didn't seem to mind, and just looked at Chen Feng. Lu Shi stayed beside them, also eager to learn more. Wang Zai then told them some things related to the people and vehicles, but Chen Feng found it strange. He didn't seem to have heard anything about the nine-tailed fox, the Uchiha, or anyone connected to the Hokage from Wang Zai. He found this odd, wondering if it was due to the system's interference. Every time he tried to ask the system about this, he was only told that he couldn't learn about these things yet. Chen Feng was always angry, but since the system refused to tell him, he had no choice but to let things continue as they were. This surprises me. I've never heard anyone mention these things before. In that case, let's go and see what the real powerful ninjas are like. I've never seen what these so-called truly powerful ninjas are like. Chapter 332 Solution. After listening to Wang Zai's words, Chen Feng found it strange that there was nothing related to Naruto that he knew about. However, since Wang Zai had already said so, they might as well continue on their journey together. They were bound to encounter someone who knew about these things eventually. He glanced at them. Because he wasn't sure if they had any such information, Chen Feng hadn't mentioned the nine-tailed fox or Yuzhibo, things that many Naruto figures should know. There was another matter that Chen Feng found strange, but he didn't reveal it directly. You seem to be thinking about something, Wang Zai said. It's been like this since we started traveling together. It seems like you've been wondering about something. If you trust me, tell me about it, and I'll try to figure it out. He smiled at Chen Feng, seemingly genuinely wanting to help, but Chen Feng only smiled back and refused his request. He didn't need to explain further, and he didn't want to tell him everything he knew. Upon entering this place and hearing the system's words, Chen Feng was already on high alert. None of them could be sure if there were other dangers here. What if there were other things in this place? What if there were other people among them planted by the system? Chen Feng had to be wary of these people. According to his system, it was impossible for them to know each other's identities, but a higher-ranking system might be able to. Therefore, Chen Feng needed to be cautious. He didn't want to encounter any more dangers. Thinking of this, he looked at Wang Zai. Wang Zai smiled at him. As Chen Feng had said, Wang Zai was very likely someone with a system, something Chen Feng's system was currently suspecting. In fact, systems didn't know each other's identities, so he wasn't entirely sure. Chen Feng had originally thought he only needed to travel with Lu Shi, but unexpectedly, Wang Zai had suddenly entered the picture. Now that Wang Zai had spoken, they definitely had to deal with these matters. He felt somewhat helpless, but this was something that needed to be resolved. Chen Feng began to suspect that Wang Zai might be another person with a system. This was something he found hard to accept, especially since Wang Zai had helped him before. However, many of Wang Zai's actions seemed to suggest he was someone else with a system. Otherwise, how could he have done these things? What are you thinking? From the moment we started moving forward until now, you seem hesitant about something. What's wrong? Why don't you tell me? I can see if I can help you with this, and you won't be so strangely anxious now. When Chen Feng heard this, he was initially startled. He hadn't expected Wang Zai's expression to be so intense. He could even tell from his expression that Wang Zai was agitated about something, which Chen Feng considered dangerous, and he didn't want them to notice. So, Ruokyu looked at him and smiled. He realized that Wang Zai's current state was unacceptable. His emotions were too obvious. Just looking at him, he could clearly see why Wang Zai was agitated. He needed to find a way to resolve this. There's nothing else going on. I just suddenly thought of some things. Don't think about these things right now. Let's get ready. I'm planning to take you to another place. Let's look around here first. We don't know if there are any other dangerous places. He smiled at him as he said this. Hearing Chen Feng's words, Lu Tai thought about it. He came here with Chen Feng to become stronger. Since Chen Feng didn't want to talk about this, there was no need for him to force him to say these things and make Chen Feng dislike him at this moment. Since that's the case, then you can handle these things yourself. I won't say anything more. If you need any help, just tell me. Although my strength isn't as great as yours, I can still help you with these matters. He smiled at him as he said this, as if that was indeed what he was thinking. Chen Feng didn't say anything more. Anyway, the matter could be resolved now, and there was no need for him to be anxious about it anymore. He just looked at him again and didn't say anything more. Then Chen Feng looked at him. They needed to go to another place. Wang Zai arrived at this time. Chen Feng didn't dare to say anything else to Wang Zai, nor did he want to mention to him whether there were any powerful creatures around. Because only by fighting powerful monsters could he become stronger. Chen Feng still believed that only by fighting could he become stronger, but he didn't tell anyone about this. He wasn't sure of their identities, so he just looked at the people here. So Chen Feng hesitated for a while, and then suddenly thought of the system. Therefore, he suddenly summoned the system at this moment, and the system immediately responded to Chen Feng. Both Chen Feng and the system value this mission highly. Chen Feng was incapable, remaining stuck in this position, but the system knew that if Chen Feng couldn't complete the mission, it would also be in danger. If Chen Feng failed and became the one eliminated by someone else's system, then its system would be taken back, meaning it would cease to exist. Having already made its own decision, it certainly didn't want such a situation, so it immediately spoke to Chen Feng. Is there anything I can help you with? If so, please state your request directly. I'm here to offer some assistance at this time. Of course, if the request is too unreasonable, it's impossible to fulfill. Please clarify what this matter is first. It could offer Chen Feng some help, but not too obviously. If someone else's system noticed, although they had certainly done similar things before, if they told others, they too might face danger. So he hesitated for a moment and stayed there without saying anything else. He just waited for the system to explain everything to him. Chen Feng didn't say anything more either. He knew very well that some things couldn't be solved just by wanting to do them. He could only see what the system was thinking now. I need to find out what level of monsters are around here. Since you said you want me to make Lu Tai stronger, then he has to fight. But there's something else I need to ask you. Can you guarantee that Lu Shi is definitely not a system owner? If not, why should I help him at this time? Chen Feng directly told the system this, because he knew very well that if Lu Tai was also a system owner, then everyone would be in danger. If Lu Shi wasn't, then he would definitely have to help Lu Shi a lot because of his current suspicions. But if he was, then he could be a little more vigilant at this time. He didn't want to encounter any other dangers himself. When the system heard this, it hesitated for a moment. It didn't expect Chen Feng to bring this up. But since Chen Feng said so, it would look into it. Of course, it was certain that Lu Tai was not a system owner. And then it told him about it. Chen Feng wasn't anxious about this matter when he heard this. Since that was the case, he could then help Lu Shi and Lu Tai resolve this issue. Thinking of this, Chen Feng simply smiled again. He knew very well that these people with systems could become his enemies, and he obviously didn't want to encounter any further danger. He had to resolve this matter first, only after resolving it could he learn anything else. Chen Feng looked at Lu Shi. He had learned from the system what kind of things were around and where he could train. Unlike these people, he now truly understood how to train like a ninja, but it was clear that he couldn't become a ninja in his current state. Then he needed to think of another way to solve this problem. Only Chen Feng knew how to come up with a solution. At this moment, Chen Feng looked in that direction, determined to find out the truth. Suddenly, Wang Zai walked towards him. I see you don't seem as talkative as you were when you first came to our village. Did my arrival upset you, or did something to make you angry? If so, please tell me directly and don't hold it against me. Chapter 333 Hesitation. As he said this, he smiled at Chen Feng, seemingly genuinely embarrassed for having done something to offend him. Chen Feng, however, knew perfectly well that he hadn't done anything wrong. Chen Feng was simply suspicious of him. So, he smiled back somewhat sheepishly and pondered the matter. He realized that Chen Feng's behavior had indeed been rather obvious, as he hadn't said anything further, which might have made Chen Feng suspicious. Furthermore, Chen Feng wasn't yet certain that Chen Feng was truly someone with a system, as Chen Feng suspected. The system hadn't stated that people with systems like theirs would necessarily harm them. It's true that I'm a bit anxious right now because of some things, and I didn't expect to have to explain this to you. It's also because of Lu Tai. He's a bit different from others. The reason I'm willing to help him is because I really want to continue being friends with him. But he's really not suitable to be a ninja in his current state. Do you know there's something else here? He can take this opportunity to learn about this matter from Wang Zai. He's never been to this place before. If we suddenly take them to places where they can train, it might arouse their suspicion. It's better to let him learn about these things from him first, so no one will suspect anything. There's a place around here where he can train for now. Even non-ninjas can train, but it might be slower than the training of those ninjas before. Since he can't become a ninja anyway, it depends on what you think. Do you want him to become a strong person as soon as possible, or do you want him to take his time? Hearing this, Chen Feng naturally wanted him to become a strong person, but if they forced him to do so too quickly, it might harm him later. This clearly wasn't in line with Chen Feng's thinking. He glanced at Lu Shi, who seemed lost in thought, and then smiled at him. Then take me to that place first. I'll see if he can cultivate there. If he can, of course I want him to become a strong person, but I don't want to harm him just to make him strong. That's something I definitely don't want to do. So please take me there first. Hearing this, Wang Zai smiled. He didn't say anything more. Chen Feng, however, seemed more concerned about Lu Shi than he expected. Wang Zai simply looked at Chen Feng and then led him in that direction. Regardless of Chen Feng's true intentions, Wang Zai already understood some things. At this moment, Chen Feng's system remained silent. We're heading in another direction now. There are some things I need to clarify with you first. I think they really did tell you that you could never become a ninja, but I don't want to believe it. I also think I can find a way to help you resolve these issues, but I need to know if you're willing to take this gamble with me. He was now offering to help him become a strong man, which was inherently a gamble. Lu Tai thought about this for a moment, then suddenly smiled at him. In his view, this wasn't a big deal. In short, this matter had to be resolved, and he was certain he could find a way to solve it. Now that we're already here, even if you tell me now that it's impossible for me to become strong again, I can't go back. I need to become stronger myself. Only when I become strong can I prevent anyone from hurting those around me because of me. He glanced at Chen Feng as he said this, but Chen Feng, who was determined to do this, smiled at him. Since he was already certain, he had nothing more to say. He was willing to help him in this matter. Chen Feng was still somewhat afraid when he heard this, but he trusted him. Besides, this matter hadn't reached the point where they said they couldn't resolve it. Chen Feng only said that he might not become strong so quickly. Why did he need to be so fast? He didn't want to end up like the person who fought Chen Feng before, only strong for a short while before losing again. He didn't want to truly become strong that way. Then wait for me to go and gather some things. We'll head in that direction after that. Whatever it takes, as long as you can make me stronger, I'm willing to try. Anyway, it's not something that can't be solved, and I believe you can make me stronger. I think I'm certain of that. When he said this, he smiled at Chen Feng. Chen Feng felt a little helpless. Why was he so sure he could make him stronger? But then he looked at Wang Zai, who then led them in that direction. Wang Zai just smiled and put everything away. As they moved forward, the atmosphere between Chen Feng and the others became more relaxed. They were no longer as wary of Chen Feng as before, which was why they didn't dare to speak to him. Wang Zai was like that, and so was Lu Tai. Of course, Wang Zai was afraid of disturbing Chen Zubito. Lu Tai had never seen Chen Feng act like that before, which was why he didn't dare to speak to him earlier. He was afraid that he might say something that would anger Chen Feng. Now, seeing him like this, he gradually understood what kind of person Chen Feng was. He just sometimes seemed fierce. Thinking of this, he smiled again and followed him. Lu Tai clearly knew that place was dangerous, otherwise, Chen Feng wouldn't have told him beforehand and then asked him to go with him. But no matter how dangerous it was, he was willing to go. He was willing to go as long as Chen Feng said so. Chen Feng had no reason to deceive him. If Chen Feng didn't want him to become stronger, there was no need to go to that village to find him. He followed Chen Feng here and looked at everything. He found it strange that Chen Feng had chosen this place first. It's around our village. Why come here first? There's never anything too dangerous around our village. Why come here to make me stronger? And you said before that the place we were going to must be very dangerous. Why is this place the only one? Hearing this, Chen Feng smiled and looked at him. It seemed that Chen Feng didn't consider this place particularly dangerous. But this wasn't what he wanted him to do. He then led him to another place, looked down the mountain, and then looked back at Lu Tai. Lu Tai found Chen Feng's current expression strange. He had indeed brought him to this mountain, and he'd found it odd since Chen Feng had mentioned they might be going to a dangerous place. But what dangerous place could possibly be around their village? He wasn't unaware of such things. I need you to run from the foot of the mountain to this place as quickly as possible. The faster you are, the better, so I can see how to make you stronger. You can try now. No rest is allowed. You can only walk or run up here, Chen Feng said, looking at him directly. Lu Tai was surprised by Chen Feng's words. He hadn't expected Chen Feng to say this at this moment. He himself found it strange, but regardless, Chen Feng had already said it. That's all. Are there any other requests? If so, tell me now. As long as you can make me stronger, I'll try anything you ask me to do. Please tell me what's going on. At that moment, he glanced at Chen Feng. Although he didn't understand the whole situation or whether Chen Feng had any ulterior motives in asking him to do it, he felt Chen Feng had no reason to lie to him. He hesitated for a moment, then followed Chen Feng's instructions. Wang Zai then approached Chen Feng. He also found Chen Feng's actions strange. If he had said he wanted to make this person stronger, why make him do this? Someone unfamiliar with the situation might think Chen Feng was deliberately playing a trick on him, but they knew Chen Feng wasn't that kind of person. So Wang Zai told him without hesitation, since you said you wanted him to become stronger, why not just tell him the method now? Why make him do it this way? Doing this might make others think you're deliberately playing a trick on him. Why do you do this? He glanced at Chen Feng again, already finding the situation strange. Chen Feng smiled at him, as if he didn't care. There were just some things that needed to be clarified. So, he looked at the other person. He had initially found the matter strange, but seeing Chen Feng's current state, as if he were doing something, he decided to tell him. Chen Feng smiled upon hearing this and then looked at him again, not hiding anything from him, and told him directly. Chapter 334 Cultivation Mission. Because you can't become a ninja yet. Look at us coming up here, you didn't feel tired, and neither did I. He only got this far, and he's already like this. That's why he can only be an ordinary person. I have to let him understand what it's like to be a ninja. Hearing Chen Feng say this, Lu Shi didn't directly say whether he believed Chen Feng or not, but just smiled at him again. Chen Feng felt that it was very likely that he wasn't entirely willing to believe him, but he didn't care too much about that. Whether he believed him or not didn't matter to Chen Feng. Chen Feng just glanced at that person. Whether he could become stronger depended on himself. He just smiled again. He wanted to see what level this person could achieve now. He had to see how long it would take him to get to this place so that Chen Feng could understand where he should train at the beginning. Why did you come with us? You said you needed some experience. If that's really all, you didn't need to come here with us, especially now that I'm sending you here to train. What can you gain here? You definitely wouldn't want to train in a place like this. While Lu Shi was cultivating, Chen Feng watched as Wang Zai directly brought up the matter. He already found it strange that Wang Zai was following them. He could have cultivated on his own, so why come to a place like this? Chen Feng heard Wang Zai say this, and Wang Zai simply smiled at Chen Feng without speaking. Chen Feng sensed that Wang Zai didn't want to discuss the matter further. Although he didn't force Wang Zai to reveal everything, Chen Feng still harbored suspicions. He was more suspicious of Wang Zai than Lu Shi, because he couldn't be sure of Wang Zai's true motives for approaching him. However, he couldn't directly say so. Thinking about this, Chen Feng felt somewhat helpless, but there was nothing he could do. Since things had already progressed this far, and they were traveling together, he could only try to find out more from Wang Zai. Of course, if Wang Zai wasn't willing to talk about it now, there was nothing he could do. Thinking this, Chen Feng smiled. It seemed this matter was still unclear how to resolve. Chen Feng led him to that place. He was even more puzzled as to why Wang Zai had come with him. Given his own strength, he wouldn't gain much here, yet Wang Zai had chosen to come with him. Chen Feng found this strange. However, since he was already here, he couldn't just tell him directly. When they arrived, they simply followed his instructions to train. He had talked to Wang Zai about it, but Wang Zai only said he wanted to stay with him. He didn't understand why. You need to train here for a while. You really can't become a ninja, largely because you don't have the strength. So, try it out here, see if you can become stronger. He smiled at him as he finished speaking. It was hard to understand what he was doing, but since they were already here, he had to explain everything. Hearing this, Lu Shi simply smiled back at Chen Feng. No matter what it is, as long as you tell me, I'm willing to believe you at this moment. If you're not willing to help me, there's no need to look for me there. So I'm willing to believe you, and you don't need to hesitate because of this. You just need to tell me what you're going to do. As he said this, he smiled at him again. Chen Feng could tell from his expression that he truly believed in him, though he was somewhat helpless. but mostly happy because this person was willing to believe in him, even in a dangerous mission, and was willing to accompany him to solve it at this moment. Of course, his willingness to help Lu Tai wasn't just because of the mission. After all, he was the first person he met in this world, and he had given him so much help. No matter what, he was still happy. So he smiled at him again at this moment, although he didn't say anything else. Tomorrow we'll be heading from this place to another, where you can gain even greater strength. However, you'll need to understand some other things, and the place will be even more dangerous. So think carefully, this is truly a dangerous situation. I don't want you to regret it later. This is the most dangerous situation Chen Feng has encountered. If it were just Chen Feng going, he wouldn't be bothered by it, it wouldn't cause him any harm. But Lu Shi is there too. He looked at Lu Shi and spoke to him, but Lu Shi just smiled at Chen Feng, unconcerned about the danger. Since he'd decided to become a strong person, encountering these kinds of things was inevitable. Even if he felt more afraid now, there was nothing else he could do. He just smiled at Ye Shen again. He truly felt there was no room for hesitation. What's there to hesitate about? It's just danger. From the moment I started traveling with you, I sensed that what I was about to do was likely very dangerous, but I didn't hesitate because of it. If I couldn't even handle some danger, what would I be doing with you at this time? Chen Feng didn't speak, but continued to lead him to that place. When they arrived, he saw a fierce tiger pounce on them, staring at them with eyes that seemed to regard Chen Feng as their own. Chen Feng looked at him at that moment. He looked at Lu Shi at this moment. Before, he had been teaching Lu Shi how to fight others, and had made him stronger. Now it was time to see if he could handle this situation. He looked at Lu Shi and then at the fierce tiger. He was very strong, so he directly spoke to Lu Shi. You've probably seen it too. This is a tiger, the most powerful creature around here. The reason I brought you here is to have you defeat it now. If you can defeat this tiger, you'll become a true powerhouse, but if you can't, you'll likely be killed by it. Chen Feng looked at him and told him directly. From the moment he brought him here, he hadn't intended to hide this from him. This was indeed a very ferocious tiger. If he could defeat it, his strength would naturally increase significantly, but if he couldn't, Chen Feng wasn't sure he could help him. He then looked at Lu Shi again. Although they weren't sure how to explain this to him, he thought Lu Shi should understand how dangerous it was. Looking at Lu Shi now, he could tell from Lu Shi's expression that he wasn't truly unfazed by the situation. There's something else I need to make clear to you first. I can't be absolutely certain I can help you defeat this tiger. So if you really decide to fight it, you have to be absolutely certain you can defeat it. Otherwise, if you lose, I can't immediately help you if it tries to harm you. You'd better figure out what to do first. He then looked at Su Baiyaoxiang's situation again, explaining that he wasn't trying to threaten him, but rather that he genuinely felt helpless about the situation. Anyway, he needed to clarify things with him first. He looked at him, unsure of his thoughts. But that was all he could say. Whether or not to fight him again was up to him. So Chen Feng looked at Lu Tai, then sat down to the side, just to see what he would do. Actually, Chen Feng was certain that if the tiger tried to harm him during the fight, he could indeed defeat it. But he wanted Lu Tai to understand how dangerous the situation was. It was impossible for Chen Feng to be by his side every time he encountered danger. The system hadn't yet given Lu Tai any further tasks. So Chen Feng wanted Lu Tai to make another choice at this moment. If he didn't want to do it, he could avoid danger by hesitating. He looked at Lu Tai again to see what he wanted to do, to see what Lu Tai thought. He just looked at him without saying anything. Chen Feng looked at the people here. When he brought Wang Zai and Lu Tai here, many people had already gathered here. However, when he inquired with the system told him that there was no one else here. That was why he decided to bring Lu Tai here to cultivate. But since there were so many people here, something must have happened. He thought that whatever it was, he should find out first. He looked over and was about to find out what was going on when someone walked over to them happily. Of course, his eyes were on Lu Tai. Chapter 335 Rewards. When I returned to the village, they said you went out with someone. I was wondering who could make you leave the village at this time. It's this person next to you. Who is he? I haven't heard you mention him to anyone. And why did you come here with him? He said this to Lu Shi. Lu Shi was taken aback at first, looking at the man strangely. He hadn't expected him to come to him for this reason. Of course, he didn't say anything more at this moment, as there were still some things that needed to be resolved. He looked at the man in front of him again. The man smiled at him. He wasn't quite sure what the man wanted, but since he had met someone from the village, he should at least greet him. So he smiled at him again. Originally, I left the village to wander around and see places I'd never been before. Now that I've ended up here and met you, it must truly be a coincidence. But this place is so far from our village. What are you doing here? I've heard from others that it's dangerous here. He rushed over and smiled again. Of course, Lu Tai had his reasons for saying these things. People in our village don't like to leave the village. He was one of those people who left, and he didn't leave the village often. The last time was when he met Chen Feng. You don't know this. There's someone here who said that if we're willing to believe what he says, he can make us very powerful. Some people didn't believe it before, but when they actually followed him, they really did become very strong because of him. Lu Tai was stunned when he heard this. He looked at Chen Feng again, wondering if Chen Feng was behind it. But then he remembered that Chen Feng had been with him the whole time. Judging from the way these people looked, they must have been here for a while. If that person hadn't appeared, it was obviously impossible for them to become like this. In other words, that person should have been staying with Jin Zhao for some time now. That's why these people are so anxious and eager to figure out what's going on. He finds this matter even stranger, and that's why he looked at them again at this moment. I really don't understand this matter. Could you please tell me what's going on? You also know that what this person wants most is to become stronger. So if you can tell me about this, I'd be happier than anyone else. Why don't you tell me what happened first? He said, looking at the man again. He genuinely wanted to understand the situation, but he didn't feel the need to explain directly how to resolve it. He just wanted to know the details. The man smiled at him. He had been wondering how to explain it, but since they were already on the topic, he figured they might as well find out together. So he smiled and said, I only came here after hearing about this from them. Otherwise, you know very well who in our village would be willing to come out. But when I arrived, I could definitely sense that this man was very powerful. Those who followed him did whatever he said, and he could make them stronger. Lu Shi was stunned when he heard this. This was different from Chen Feng's request. Chen Feng had only asked him to follow him so that he could become stronger. So, no matter what methods he used, Chen Feng hadn't mentioned them at this time. Instead, it was other things that surprised him. But what Chen Feng was saying now really puzzled him. Why did such a person exist? He felt that what those people said couldn't be true. Because Chen Feng hadn't said that being with him would definitely turn him into the opposite. He had only said that he was willing to let him try. He looked at Chen Feng, who was thinking about this. Speaking of which, you still haven't told me who these people are. You still haven't told me who these people with you are. They shouldn't be from our village. But why did you suddenly appear at this time? You should have arrived when I left the village. Did you also sense this person who can make others very powerful? Lu Shi was stunned upon hearing this. He hadn't yet figured out how to tell this person, because Chen Feng definitely didn't want others to discover his injured identity. Looking inside, Chen Feng felt that the person inside was very likely another person with the system, and he felt somewhat helpless. Firstly, possessing a system meant possessing a cheat ability whose details he knew nothing about. This was terrifying, something he couldn't even comprehend. Chen Feng grew increasingly worried. But more than anything, he felt angry about this matter. How many people with systems had entered this place? If this matter wasn't resolved now, if he couldn't figure these things out, staying here was already very dangerous. Therefore, what they were telling him now seemed strange. Chen Feng hadn't done these things, but since they were saying so, someone must have done them, and this person, in Chen Feng's view, was very likely another person with the system. Otherwise, no one would dare to do such a thing at this time. When Chen Feng heard what they were saying, he already suspected that this person possessed another system and was now doing something. It's possible they were trying to lure them out, but of course, they wouldn't be deceived like that. He just glanced at the people around them and suddenly smiled. When Lu Tai heard what they were saying, he felt that they might be deliberately trying to harm others. Naturally, he was angry about this, and it was precisely because of this sudden anger that he was about to rush forward and tell them directly. But Chen Fengjie suddenly stopped him at this moment. Don't be anxious right now. This matter isn't unsolvable. Let me understand what's going on first. As for other things, you don't need to think about them right now. After I figure these things out, we'll think of a way to deal with what these people did. At that moment, he smiled at Lu Tai. Indeed, Chen Feng suspected that the person was another person possessing the system, and he wasn't entirely sure why he was doing this. His system's task was to make Lu Tai stronger, or perhaps each system's task was different. He wasn't entirely sure what kind of task it was that required him to deceive the villagers. Chen Feng just felt they shouldn't have much interaction, and he didn't need to get involved. He figured the system wouldn't do anything to harm these people. He looked in that direction, but didn't find anything. Just as Chen Feng was about to take Lu Tai to another place to cultivate, the system suddenly issued him another task. This surprised Chen Feng. The system hadn't issued a task at this time for a while. Chen Feng was genuinely surprised, but he didn't say anything then. He just thought for a moment and checked the system's requirements. It asked him to determine if the people here had harmed the villagers. If so, Chen Feng needed to stop them. There would be a reward after the task. What's wrong? Why did you suddenly stop now, or are you sure they're liars, deliberately deceiving the villagers at this time? If that's the case, then you absolutely cannot let them go now. No matter what they're trying to do, you mustn't let them get away with it. He said this to him at that moment. Chen Feng smiled helplessly upon hearing this. How could he possibly be sure whether these people had done anything to harm others? Even the system couldn't confirm this, so how could he? He smiled helplessly at him. Don't be in such a hurry. Let me find out what's going on first, and then I'll tell you. You're suddenly telling me all this, and I'm not entirely clear on the matter either. Let me understand the situation first. As for anything else you want to know, I'm not entirely sure right now either. Chen Feng was definitely somewhat helpless as he said this, because the system hadn't directly told him that those people had harmed the villagers. Therefore, Chen Feng couldn't be certain about this matter, and he didn't want to wrongly accuse someone at this point. Upon hearing this, Lu Tai glanced at Chen Feng. Although he felt that what those people said was likely false, just as Chen Feng said, they couldn't be sure about the matter yet, and he couldn't simply say that those people were deliberately deceiving the villagers. Chapter 336 Disdain. However, he didn't understand how they would confirm this. It was impossible for him to simply join the organization as these people claimed. He didn't even know if his friend had gone with them, which made him feel somewhat helpless. But Chen Feng now thought of something else. System, I have something to tell you. You need to explain this to me first. Are there other people with this system here besides you who can detect my identity? If what they're doing is just to lure me out and get rid of me, what else do I need to do? The system fell silent. Chen Feng had already sensed something. It was indeed very likely what he thought. There was definitely something he didn't understand. Chen Feng was definitely angry at this, but since things had already come to this, he had to think about how to resolve the situation. At this moment, he thought again. The system still hadn't told him. Ye Shen knew very well. Was it really the system's fault this time? Even if he wanted to know, he had no other way. He could only look at Lu Tai again, smile at him, and then speak. Don't be anxious about this. Come with me over there first. Although I can't be sure what's going on yet, once I get there and find out, I'll be able to figure out what those people are trying to do. Lu Shi hesitated for a moment, then decided to trust Chen Feng. He figured Chen Feng wouldn't lie to him about this, so he smiled at Chen Feng without saying anything more, just glanced at him and left. Chen Feng hadn't expected Lu Shi to believe him so readily. If he was intentionally deceiving him, Chen Feng thought for a moment, then looked at Lu Shi again, still not revealing anything. He simply led him forward to find his friend. He needed to find out how to join the organization. If joining the organization would help him understand this, he needed to think about it now. Once he joined the organization, he could figure out how to resolve these issues. Right now, he couldn't be sure if they had harmed anyone, and he couldn't just go and hurt them directly. So he didn't know what to do. Thinking about this, he felt somewhat helpless, but he didn't say anything. He just glanced at them again and went in another direction. He still had some things to deal with, so he just glanced at them again and continued on his way, still thinking about other things. Chen Feng then went to find that person's friend. He wanted to see if he could learn how to cultivate and what conditions were required. Of course, if only a few small conditions were needed to enter, Ye Shen didn't care. What he needed to determine now was whether this person belonged to the system. If so, Chen Feng wouldn't let him go, and neither would he let Chen Feng go. Since that was the case, he might as well strike first. He found these people's actions quite strange. Why do something so obvious, letting others discover his identity so he could be eliminated? He just smiled again. We need you to ask your friend to find out for us how to cultivate with this person. I don't mean anything by it, I just want to understand these things. Since he said he can make these people stronger, he must have his own reasons. Chen Feng smiled at him as he said this. He did have his own reasons, but he didn't know what they were yet. Even after he figured it out, he wouldn't necessarily believe him so readily. Lu Shi also felt a little strange when he heard this, and looked at Chen Feng. He had seen how strong Chen Feng was. According to them, this person was not as strong as Chen Feng at all. Moreover, after trying the methods Chen Feng had told him, he did find that his strength had increased. If that was the case, why did he still come here to understand these people's cultivation methods? He looked at Chen Feng, which was indeed very strange about this matter. Of course, Chen Feng just looked at him again and smiled at him. He wasn't unaware of what Lu Shi was thinking, but there was no need to tell them. Lu Shi was watching Chen Feng, who seemed to want to clarify things. He found it strange that Chen Feng needed to ask this person how to cultivate. In fact, Chen Feng's own methods were already quite powerful. Just as he was about to explain things to Chen Feng smiled at him. Of course I can't cultivate with them. I just need to understand some things and see if their cultivation methods will harm others. You just need to take me there, after all, your friends are here, and you probably don't want them to get hurt. Lu Shi was stunned when he heard this, and then thought about it. Indeed, as Chen Feng said, his friends were among them, and he didn't want them to be harmed. After a brief thought, he headed in that direction. He didn't want them to encounter danger here. So he continued in that direction. Whatever it was, he had to do it. As long as he could accomplish it, it wouldn't be a big deal. He headed in that direction to understand the matter, but at this moment, Chen Feng also thought of something that puzzled him. From the moment he received the task from the system, he knew very well that his system had never asked him to do anything that would harm others. So why was the system doing this? It was simply using these people here to cultivate. Chen Feng thought it was impossible for the system to do such a thing, so he found it strange. Just then, he heard the system seem to make some noise. It seemed he could now ask the system what was going on. So, after only a slight hesitation, Chen Feng decided to ask the system first. After all, this person who had been harming the people here, how could he possibly have a way to cultivate so quickly? When he had Lu Shi cultivate, he still tried to find a way to get Lu Shi there, to prevent Lu Shi from suffering any further harm. But what the system was saying now was impossible. He thought for a moment and then spoke to the system again. I have indeed heard about some things that people who may possess systems do, but many of them do things in exchange for harming villagers to obtain things for themselves. You have never given me such a task before, so why is this happening? Tell me first. He spoke to the system at that moment, and the system seemed somewhat silent upon hearing this. However, since Chen Feng had brought it up, and the system hadn't told him before because Chen Feng didn't seem interested in these matters, now that he had, it felt it necessary to explain. These were things Chen Feng should have been told in the first place, but since Chen Feng hadn't mentioned them, it hadn't considered telling him. But now that Chen Feng wanted to know, it was necessary to tell him, so it simply smiled and immediately began to explain. The requirements of different systems are different. Like the systems they've encountered here, their requirement is simply to complete the tasks. What ordinary people here encounter is not within the scope of these systems' capabilities. They only need their system owner to complete the tasks. Hearing this, Chen Feng was genuinely surprised by the system's purpose. How was this different from those systems that disregarded the feelings of ordinary people and forced them to do things? He finally understood why the system hadn't mentioned this to him before. However, his system had never done anything like this before, nor had it ever made him harm ordinary people. This actually made Chen Feng happy, as he didn't particularly like hurting others for personal gain. He had never liked doing such things. He simply glanced at them again without saying anything more. In short, this matter needed to be resolved. He just glanced at them again and didn't say anything more. In any case, the matter was now resolved, and there was nothing more to say. Chen Feng was now thinking about other things, how to resolve the current situation, how to handle the matters they had taken over, whether that person truly possessed the system, and what exactly their system's tasks were. He needed to find out. Chen Feng then walked towards the group with a lutai. Some of the people in front of them were looking at them, demanding that they hand over what the people there wanted. They said that if they handed over these things, they could get what they wanted. Of course, when Chen Feng appeared in front of them, those people looked at him with disdain. Chapter 337 I'm a person with a system. The ninjas here all wear the same clothes they usually use, meaning they have items only ninjas can use. They all wear ordinary clothes like Chen Feng, who doesn't wear ninja clothes. Of course, Chen Feng doesn't have ninja clothes either, since he's not a ninja. We heard that you can help those who can't become ninjas become stronger, or even truly become ninjas, so we came here to see for ourselves. If possible, we are willing to give you anything at this time, as long as you're willing to help us become stronger ninjas. While Su Bao was still thinking about how to resolve this matter, he saw Chen Feng suddenly change his expression, as if he genuinely wanted to understand these things. He even spoke to these people with a fawning tone, making Su Bao somewhat unable to believe this was the Chen Feng he knew before. However, Chen Feng simply smiled at him. After giving him a look, Lu Lin understood Chen Feng's meaning and approached the man with Chen Feng's smile, seemingly wanting to understand the matter as well as Chen Feng. The others, seeing this, looked at them with even more disdain, feeling that they truly deserve to be deceived by such people. Since that's the case, then just do as we say. As for things we haven't asked you to do, places we haven't asked you to go, we don't want you to go there. Otherwise, if you go to those places on your own, you'll never become any powerful individuals. They looked at Chen Feng with disdain, their words suggesting that whether Chen Feng and his group could become powerful depended on their mood. Chen Feng, however, only glanced at them and didn't intend to say anything more. He did indeed have matters to attend to, so he simply smiled at them again. Chen Feng smiled at them at this moment. Indeed, if it were in the past, he would have been furious and wanted to eliminate them for what they were doing. But that was back then, in that world where only he possessed the system. Now, there were many others in this world who possessed systems, whom he didn't understand. Therefore, he needed to find a way to resolve this matter. Looking at them and smiling, he pondered how to resolve it, but he had no intention of saying anything more now. He had no intention of arguing with them further. Since things had already come to this point, and he had resolved what he needed to resolve, there was nothing more to say. All he needed to do was deceive these people to achieve his goal. So Chen Feng smiled at them again. Of course we understand this. We certainly wouldn't dare go where you forbid us, otherwise we'd like to help the people here become stronger. It's just that this place can truly transform those of us who could never become ninjas into stronger individuals. Gunmin said this to these people. Of course, they didn't understand what Yushen meant, but Chen Feng just smiled at them. Only he knew his own thoughts, and there was no need to tell them. Hearing this, the people looked at the host and thought about it. Then, Chen Feng suddenly handed them some things. Of course, they needed to offer some benefits to get them in. Although the system could indeed help Chen Feng hide himself, it was a powerful thing to do. But if someone used the system here, it was very likely that person would notice. So, they accepted the things. Since you understand the rules of this place so well, then just go there. Anyway, this matter can definitely be resolved. You just need to go over there and take a look. Once you get there, someone will take you there. I think you'll know what to do next once you get there. Now, in their eyes, Chen Feng was someone who could bring them many benefits, so they smiled more amicably at him. After all, who would dislike someone who could bring them advantages? Chen Feng smiled back, seemingly genuinely grateful for their words. But only Chen Feng knew how much he despised these people. They were all lying, and Chen Feng knew this perfectly well, but he couldn't expose them. He couldn't reveal their lies now, because he also needed to conceal his own actions. He then looked at them again and walked away in another direction. Why did you talk to them like that? Even I was angry at their tone, but you, a strong person, held back. Why did you do that? Or do you have some other purpose? They're deceiving everyone here. Look how much they want to become strong, yet they're being deceived like this. Hearing this, Chen Feng smiled helplessly at him. He didn't know what they were thinking, but things had come to this point. What good would it do for them to dwell on it? All they could do was try to expose these people's true colors and prevent ordinary people from being deceived again. Chen Feng also wanted to deal with this person, but they didn't know what else they could do. Lu Shi, however, was still unaware of these matters, and Chen Feng had no intention of telling him. Some things could only be resolved when he encountered them himself. Until he had experienced these things firsthand, even if Chen Feng explained everything, Lu Shi wouldn't understand why he was doing this. Chen Feng simply looked at Lu Shi without directly clarifying the situation, which only made Lu Shi more puzzled. Why wouldn't he tell him these things? He felt that Chen Feng was deliberately hiding things from him, even suggesting he should figure it out himself. But he didn't understand what Chen Feng was trying to do, so he looked at him with some confusion. As Chen Feng walked towards the other person, he knew that these people had been planning this for some time. If the person doing these things truly possessed a system, they should have arrived here before them. But what that person's intentions were, he couldn't be sure yet. So Chen Feng just needed to think about it at this time. Of course, he wanted to figure out the matter, but for now, he should first find a way to get close to these people before dealing with these issues. Otherwise, if they were too wary, the host would not be able to find out who the person with the system was. If you are listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means it was downloaded and re-uploaded without effort. We warmly invite you to visit our channel, Fanfic World. There you will find the original version of this story and many other novels of various genres. We look forward to seeing you dive into a world of incredible novels. Chapter 338 Wang's Eye. You're the people who came here to find out about this matter. You couldn't have gotten here from that place. You must have given him quite a few good things. So, shouldn't you have a proper talk with us about this now? After all, if he really becomes one of us, he can possess great strength. The person Chen Feng and his group saw here didn't seem to please Yi Shen. When he looked at them, Yi Shen felt he was looking down on them. Chen Feng hated being looked down upon like that, but he hadn't brought it up yet because he was also thinking about how to resolve these issues. So, when those people expressed their disdain for Chen Feng, he simply smiled at them, seemingly unconcerned about their conversation. He then walked in another direction. He had other things to figure out and didn't need to tell them about this now. I don't know about these things either. Are you satisfied? I've only just arrived here, and there are still many things I don't understand. I'll definitely need your help with many things later. Please accept this and don't look down on us now. Chen Feng handed another package to the group. He knew exactly what they wanted, and he didn't want to upset them further. It was just one thing anyway, and giving them these things wouldn't harm him. The person who received the package smiled. What are you saying? Since you've already come here, we're happy to have you. Someone like you is well liked here. Just be yourself. If you need anything, you can always come to us. As he said this, he glanced at the package in his hand. Chen Feng understood what he meant. When they came back for help, they would need to give them some more benefits. The host just smiled and then accepted the package. Lu Tai was genuinely surprised when he saw Chen Feng doing these things. He didn't understand how Chen Feng had solved these problems, and Chen Feng seemed to know exactly what they were thinking. Wang's Eye looked at Chen Feng at this moment and then smiled at our Yuo. I was wondering if you'd gotten into a fight with them over these things, but I didn't expect you to handle this so well. It really surprises me. But it's good this way. You won't get hurt by others at this time. He smiled at them as he said this. Chen Feng smiled helplessly at his words. He hadn't done anything else, so why did they all think he had to argue with that person at this time? What was the point of him doing that? In his eyes, it was just a minor person. Even if he argued with him at this time, what was the point? It was just dealing with this person. It wasn't a big deal. So Chen Feng looked at them again, feeling somewhat helpless because of their thoughts, but he still spoke to them. There are always things you need to understand yourself. If I had argued with them earlier, let alone entering this place now, those people would definitely be on guard. Who could be sure what the purpose of this person suddenly appearing here was? Chen Feng just smiled again when he said this. He didn't know what these people were thinking, but since they were already here, there was no need to be polite anymore. This matter needed to be resolved, no matter what they said to him now. Then someone came forward and blocked Chen Feng's way as they headed in another direction. It seemed that Chen Feng had already made these people very happy. As for the others who had seen how Chen Feng and his group entered, some did the same as Chen Feng and his group, while others dared not do so. Now that we're all inside, what should we do next? Aren't you worried that they might harm ordinary people? If you find out that they really did such a thing, shouldn't you just deal with them directly? After all, they are the kind of people who have done such things. Shouldn't you do that? Lu Shi looked at Chen Feng like this. Looking at his expression, Chen Feng felt a little embarrassed. If it weren't for the system's requirement, he would never have done this at this time. He just didn't want those people to get hurt, but the injury of ordinary people had nothing to do with him. It was only because of Chen Feng that this person seemed to have a system in mind that he might pose a danger to Chen Feng this time. However, After hearing what Lu Tai said, Chen Feng wasn't sure what else to say. Wang Zai simply looked at Chen Feng and the others and smiled, saying nothing more. Seeing how anxious Chen Feng was about this, Wang Zai just smiled again, saying nothing. She didn't care what she said to Chen Feng at this moment. It was ultimately his own business, and whether he could resolve it depended on his current thoughts. Thinking this, she just smiled again. It was all his own problem. As for Lu Shi, he knew Chen Feng could handle it. He just needed to say a few words to Lu Shi. She didn't know what else she was talking about with Chen Feng, and then she looked at them again. As Chen Feng led them inside, he looked around but didn't notice anything unusual. Many other people had entered as well, and they all seemed to have received some kind of benefit from those people. Otherwise, why would they allow them into this place? Thinking this, Chen Feng smiled coldly. Only Wang Zai followed him. Chen Feng glanced at Wang Zai. Before this person appeared, Wang Zai was the other person he suspected might possess the system. Now it seemed his suspicion wasn't entirely true, but it wasn't entirely false either. He dared not draw any conclusions until he was certain. Chapter 339 Obstruction. You all need to be careful right now. If these people discover our true purpose for coming here, it won't be a simple matter. I think you all know how dangerous it is. So even if you do encounter your friends, you can't tell them what our purpose is. Zhu Bao was puzzled by this. What did Chen Feng mean? They had already entered this place, and it was impossible not to greet the people they knew. Just then, he looked at Chen Feng, and because he found this strange, he saw Ru Cheng looking in a certain direction. Chen Feng was also thinking about how to resolve this situation. Of course, he first had to pretend that he was the only one who had come here and hadn't done anything wrong. He said he met Lu Tai and Wang Zai, and they had come here together to find more ways to become stronger. He had heard about these people and that's why he came here. He decided to say what he thought he would say. Just then, he looked at Lu Tai and the others. He saw that Lu Tai seemed to be puzzled by something, so he looked at Lu Tai and decided to talk to him first, since he had come here with him. He then looked at Lu Tai. Chen Feng also found it strange. He hadn't seen Shi for a while, and now, with these thoughts swirling in his mind, he smiled at Lu Tai and moved closer. He considered the matter but decided to speak to Lu Shi directly now. Is there something you want to say? If so, just tell me. There's no need to hesitate. Tell me what it is, and I'll figure out how to resolve things here. Hearing this, Lu Tai looked at Chen Feng, genuinely finding the situation odd. Since Chen Feng didn't mind, he would explain. He wanted to understand how they would handle encountering acquaintances. Because of what you said earlier, if we encounter acquaintances, shouldn't we avoid greeting them? Revealing our identities would be too dangerous. I think what you said is true. We shouldn't talk to people we know. Chen Feng felt somewhat helpless upon hearing this, and smiled at him again. He realized he hadn't explained things clearly to him. He glanced at Lu Shi, then at Wang Zai, who also smiled helplessly. Chen Feng knew Lu Shi probably didn't do these things. If you don't greet people you know, it seems suspicious. Just talk to them like you always have. Don't be special, and don't think there's anything wrong with this. Just talk to them as usual. Now, just follow us. They then went to another place. The people there didn't ask them to do anything else, just wait, saying someone would come to help them become stronger. Chen Feng found this very strange. I've met many people who claim to make others stronger, but their methods are never good. If someone really has a way to make people stronger without harming them, then I think it's quite possible. He glanced at Wang Zai at that moment, and Wang Zai smiled back. He did think that this was acceptable, though they wouldn't allow it to happen if it involved hurting others. However, he found Chen Feng's words strange. What was he trying to do? It seemed he was saying these things intentionally, while Chen Feng smiled at Wang Zai as if he had no ulterior motives. But only Chen Feng himself knew his true thoughts. Even then, he still suspected Chen Feng. Did he have some other purpose in approaching them? We need to be careful now. We can't be sure what these people are up to. Let's think of a way to resolve this. For now, let's head in another direction. We have other things to take care of. You and I will go over there together to find out what's going on. He glanced at Li Juan, explaining that he had spoken to Wang Zai about this. It wasn't that he didn't want Lu Shi to go there, but Lu Shi's strength wasn't as great as they thought. Taking him there rashly would be too dangerous, and he didn't want Lu Shi to encounter any more dangers with him. Besides, Lu Shi was the most important person in his mission. If something happened to him here, His mission would be impossible to complete, and he needed to become even stronger. He also didn't want Lu Shi to find out what those people were saying. He glanced at him again and then led him in that direction. There were still many things to resolve. He just needed to think about their situation further and he could find a way to solve them. He headed in that direction, trying to figure out what these people's motives were. He wondered what these people's purpose was. If it was just for the small benefit they just received, there shouldn't have been such a large-scale operation. Or perhaps they had genuinely given those ordinary people something, allowing them to experience the feeling of becoming powerful, which was why they were willing to agree to give them anything they possessed. Chen Feng had considered the possibility that they were using those ordinary people for cultivation, but he hesitated for a while and ultimately decided against it. After all, this didn't fit the context of their current world. The place he had visited before was more likely to be like that. It was a matter of Naruto. Here, they didn't have the same practices as those cultivators, so he didn't suspect anything. He continued leading them in that direction. There were still many things to resolve, but at this moment, he needed to think about other things. Just as he and Wang Zai were leaving, someone suddenly stopped them. Chapter 340 Cultivators. What are you doing? Nobody told you this place is off limits. We've told you. Why are you doing this now? Do you really want to be punished before doing this? Explain yourself now. Chen Feng smiled at them. This was unexpected. They had sent people to monitor them. It seemed these people didn't truly trust them. He smiled again and approached them, handing them what he had prepared earlier. These people were clearly not the ordinary people who wanted to become stronger. They smiled when they saw what Chen Feng handed them, letting Yi Xian and Wang Zai pass over. After they left, they smiled disdainfully. They clearly knew what was going on and hadn't believed them. It seemed they were indeed well aware of these things. They probably understood what these so-called ways of making ordinary people stronger were all about. It was precisely because they understood this that they smiled disdainfully at Chen Feng and his group who had come here seeking power. Chen Feng still didn't understand what these people were thinking. He simply headed in that direction again because he had some other things to investigate. He glanced at them briefly without saying anything more, then led Wang Zai in another direction. He had noticed something strange when he first arrived. Everywhere else was heavily guarded, but this one place seemed unusually quiet. No one went there. He had already suspected it was where the leader of this place was located. Since that was the case, Chen Feng had to go and see who was there, no matter what. If you were caught, the worst that could happen was a fight. Chen Feng had never been afraid of fighting. Thinking this, he simply smiled, made a few quick preparations, and led Wang Zai in that direction. Wang Zai, still somewhat worried, asked Chen Feng, "Didn't you consider the dangers of leaving Lu Shi there alone? If he believes what those people said, it will be very dangerous. Why didn't you bring him along? I think you trust him a lot. I can tell you trust Lu Shi more than you trust me." Chen Feng smiled when he heard this. He didn't know what they were thinking, but now that things had come to this, he glanced in their direction and understood why they were hesitating. These ninjas were worried about those weaker than themselves, unsure how to properly protect them, as they still wanted to do everything in their power to safeguard them. He had noticed this along the way. No matter what danger Lu Ta encountered, Wang Zai was always the one least willing to let Chen Feng do those things, as if he were truly asking Lu Tai to do something incredibly dangerous. But Chen Feng was simply asking him to handle some matters, and he understood. He needed to become stronger at times like this. If you were always the one protecting him, what could he possibly handle? He just needed to come along. They had many other things to resolve, and after that, they would figure out what else to do. He smiled at him, glanced at him, and then led him in that direction. They still had many things to resolve, but there were also many things they didn't understand. Of course, at this moment, they needed to understand other things. Chen Feng led them in that direction. When they arrived, they found that the place was indeed heavily guarded, with many people stationed there to prevent anyone from approaching. Chen Feng had already suspected them, and he sensed something here that should never be here, the aura of the cultivators he had visited before. But this made Chen Feng even stranger. This place didn't even have a reputation. How could he cultivate here? Chen Feng felt he couldn't accept this, so he decided to first find out what was going on from his system. That's when he found the system. Don't you want to tell me what's going on now? This is the kind of memory only cultivators have. But I see there's no spiritual energy here. How could he cultivate here? This is impossible. You didn't tell me before that such a system exists. In Chen Feng's understanding, cultivators must require spiritual energy to perform these tasks. There's no spiritual energy here, so how do these people cultivate? He found this strange, but his system couldn't explain it either. They hadn't mentioned the existence of cultivators before. Moreover, they didn't actually have such a system. They could only grant the person accompanying them certain abilities in different worlds, without mentioning anything about such a system. He found this odd and glanced towards Lu Cheng and the others. He wanted to understand what was going on, but it was indeed strange. Why was something like, and you or how, here? Chen Feng had already been trying to understand how ordinary people could cultivate after noticing that person. This place lacks spiritual energy, yet he needed to cultivate. How could he do it? Luo Chun felt angry, but now that he was here, he couldn't afford to be too agitated. He would figure it out first before dealing with that person. At this moment, Chen Feng looked at them, then at the object in front of him. Wang Zai, however, found Chen Feng's silence strange. What was wrong with him? He moved closer to Chen Feng, wanting to understand why Chen Feng was in such a hurry. He moved even closer, pondering the matter, trying to figure out what was going on. Chen Feng's current situation also puzzled him, and he wanted to know what he was doing. He decided to observe Chen Feng closely and then speak directly to him. Chapter 341 Getting Stronger. What's wrong with you? What's making you feel so strange? I'm not sure what you're thinking, but you need to tell me what happened. I've never seen you like this before. Did you learn something here? He glanced at Chen Feng, pondered the matter, and decided to ask him about it first. However, Chen Feng looked at him, and he wondered how he could explain it to him. How could he accept something that could only exist in places where immortal cultivation could suddenly appear? So he looked in their direction again, hesitating because of this, but still decided to find out more first. After all, they didn't have anything he couldn't tell him. Looking at him, he decided to explain things clearly, and then he began to speak to him. I'm not entirely sure what they're planning at this time, but I should know a few things now. There's not much to say. Let's go to another place first and see who's here and what they're doing. Let's go check it out first, then we'll figure out a solution. Chen Feng seemed puzzled by something, but his system was also anxious about the situation. They really wanted to find a solution, but since things had come to this point, it was better to think of a solution first. So it's definitely something I haven't learned. But if you don't want to tell me, that's fine. We just need to go in that direction and see what else is there. We'll find out when we get there. But do you have anything else to do? Why do you seem unhappy? Chen Feng smiled at him, but he seemed quite happy now. How could you be unhappy? Actually, he was a little puzzled. His system could indeed grant him many special abilities. Even in this place, he could still use powers found elsewhere. But how could it be like this? This wasn't just him using this theory anymore. He was leading so many people to do these things here, using other people's power to accomplish these things at this time. This was already something that surprised him, and he had to find a way to solve it. Perhaps I just looked in that direction again, and he was surprised, but he couldn't mention this to anyone right now. He didn't want Wang Zai to know about this either. He still suspected that Lisa was the one with the other system, so he couldn't be sure yet. He looked in their direction without mentioning it. He did have his own ideas, but he hadn't told them how he wanted to do it. He was thinking about how to solve this problem, so he took a few steps in another direction. Now that he had realized that this person was using things that cultivators possessed, the world had to be wary of cultivators at this time. Everything they did was very dangerous, unlike ninjas. Their magic arrays were things that people in these places had never understood. That's why, despite Ye Shen's formidable power, Zizé and the others felt somewhat helpless. They seemed to have no other choice but to investigate further. They moved closer to a certain place, wondering what else might be there. Wang Zai then prepared to walk in one direction. Chen Feng noticed some ominous spiritual energy emanating from that area and immediately pulled her away. He looked in those directions again, indeed feeling helpless about the situation, but at this point, there seemed to be nothing more to learn. He looked in those directions again, trying to determine what else was there. This place was indeed too dangerous, and he didn't want those around him to be in danger. Since Wang Zai had come with him, he needed to resolve this matter. However, Wang Zai looked at Chen Feng with some confusion and then directly told Ye Shen. The place I was going to was very dangerous. How did you find out? We ninjas don't have the ability to know these things. Or are you still unwilling to trust me, and are you still hiding things from me at this time? What exactly happened? Can you tell me first?" Chen Feng's expression immediately became serious, and he looked at him again. He hadn't expected that what he was doing might arouse his suspicion. But now wasn't the time, and Chen Feng didn't intend to explain these things directly to him, especially since his identity couldn't be revealed. He knew very well where he came from, but that didn't mean he could let them know. So Chen Feng looked at him and suddenly smiled at him, which made him feel very strange. Why Chen Feng had been unwilling to reveal his identity, and whether Wang Zai possessed a system, remained uncertain. However, Chen Feng had already discerned that the person who had created this place and convinced these people they could become stronger was undoubtedly another person with a system. His claim of making these people stronger was a lie, merely a ploy to exploit their cultivation. Chen Feng was furious, but he couldn't let these people discover his intentions. He needed to find a way to resolve this situation. He glanced in another direction. While pondering possible solutions, Chen Feng noticed several people rushing towards them. Thinking their identities had been discovered, he quickly pulled his companions away, trying to avoid detection. Just as he was pulling them away, the others rushed towards them. They were puzzled when they saw someone running in front of them, seemingly trying to avoid a presence. But as the person passed, Chen Feng was astonished to discover that this person couldn't be considered human. Chapter 342 Confrontation. What are you all standing there for? Hurry up and catch him. He's very important to them. If he gets away now, you'll all be punished. So what are you waiting for? Chase after him and catch him now. The man was being chased and caught by Chen Feng and his group. Chen Feng could see the fear in the man's eyes when he was caught, especially his current state. Chen Feng was surprised. How could anyone do such a thing? Even if no one told him, he now knew exactly what was going on. It seemed they were using them to cultivate. Thinking about this, he felt somewhat helpless, but since things had come to this point, he had to find a way to resolve the situation. He looked in those directions again. However, he still couldn't be sure. But since things had come to this point, he might as well try to find a solution. Chen Feng was still somewhat surprised that someone would do anything for cultivation, having brought these people to this place. He didn't even need to think to know that the person they captured was there to force them to cultivate for that other person. He had witnessed similar things somewhere before. It seemed a system had given them those abilities. But now that things had come to this, their actions seemed rather strange. He glanced in that direction, wanting to understand what was happening, but having already witnessed what had happened to that person, Chen Feng, even if he hadn't wanted to get involved before, couldn't let things continue like this. He looked helplessly at the person beside him. Now you should understand why I didn't want them near that place. Don't tell Lu Tai about this yet. I think that person is someone Lu Shi knew before. I saw that person in their village, so keep this a secret for me until we find him and can tell him. Chen Feng felt somewhat helpless as he spoke. He didn't want to deceive Lu Shi at this point, but they had no other choice but to figure out when to lie to him and deal with the situation first. They couldn't stay here any longer and had to go back. He was getting anxious about leaving Lu Shi there alone. Before I was sure about this, I thought they were just deceiving these people, doing things for them to get some benefits. I never imagined they would actually do these things. Chen Feng was very angry when he said this. He could see that everyone around him was also angry. After all, they were in this situation. But what Chen Feng found even stranger was that he had previously thought these people wouldn't dare to do these things, but now it seemed he hadn't expected them to be capable of anything. Although he was angry, he wondered if there was any other way to resolve this matter. He could only try to move closer in one direction. He was truly desperate to resolve this situation. At this point, he had no other choice but to think of a way to get those people out of there. That person should have already been brought here. Sometimes they would use him for cultivation, so they would definitely do something else at this time. Otherwise, why would they do this? He looked in that direction and thought about it, then led them a little closer in another direction. When they returned, they saw Lu Shi pacing anxiously back and forth, looking at Chen Feng. Lu Shi, initially pleased to see Chen Feng, immediately approached him. However, seeing Chen Feng's less than happy expression, Lu Shi assumed Chen Feng had discovered everyone here was lying. He had always felt this way. Besides Chen Feng, how many people could genuinely do things for others? Now, in his eyes, Chen Feng was truly a good person, while those others were bad. Nevertheless, he spoke to Chen Feng first. Did you discover something else? If so, tell me first, and we can figure out a solution. Why are you so unhappy about this? Or did you discover something else? Chen Feng smiled slightly upon hearing this, but didn't mention the matter. He was also pondering how to resolve it, but now, he hesitated whether to tell Lu Shi about his friend's situation. The person he saw was someone he'd seen in Lu Tai's village. He seemed to have a good relationship with Lu Tai. When Lu Tai wanted to go out with him, he'd spoken to Lu Shi, telling him not to let Lu Tai get into danger. That's why the god of gamblers was hesitant to tell him about this now. He was hesitant, but Lu Shi felt Chen Feng must have discovered something. After all, he'd just heard someone running away, and the voices sounded like they were in great pain. He actually wanted to go out and help that person, but then he thought he couldn't let Chen Feng and the others get into danger with him. However, he also found the person's words strange. Why did he feel like he'd heard that person's voice before? He thought about it, considering how to handle things, but there was a reason he hadn't brought it up. Anyway, things had already come to this point. A little more patience would resolve everything. Chen Feng stayed there for a moment, and seeing Lu Shi's expression, he seemed genuinely frightened by what had just happened. After all, he had just experienced something similar. Chen Feng hesitated, wondering whether to tell him what had happened. He had indeed met his friend at that place. After a moment's hesitation, Wang Zai noticed that Chen Feng seemed anxious about something, but he didn't confront him. He could tell that something was amiss with Chen Feng. Chen Feng only hesitated for a short while before looking at Lu Shi and telling him directly. Chapter 343, A Land of Risk. I have something I need to tell you right now. Don't be anxious about this. It involves a friend of yours. I saw him back then. He was in some danger. I've decided to tell you about it. He hesitated for a moment, but decided to tell him anyway. Otherwise, if he figured it out himself, it would be even harder to resolve. When Lu Shi heard this, he was somewhat suspicious of Chen Feng. He had many friends in that place, but he didn't know who Chen Feng was referring to. Besides, he felt his friend shouldn't be here. The person he met before hadn't been able to enter and had gone back, even looking at them with envy when they entered. Now, hearing Chen Feng's words, he found it strange that his friend had come in. He had been thinking about this matter, trying to figure out how to resolve it and what to say to them, when Chen Feng looked at him with a very serious expression. Lu Tai, upon hearing this, wondered why Chen Feng was so serious. Chen Feng looked at him again at this moment. He was truly certain of the situation and had no other way to resolve it. He figured it was better to be upfront with him, that way, they might still be able to resolve the matter. So he directly told him, "It's that friend you met before. When I brought you out, he greeted you and asked when you were going back to your village. I think you're good friends with him, perhaps you even heard his voice just now." Lu Shi was stunned when he heard this. Chen Feng said he might have heard his friend's voice. He thought of the shouts he heard while he was in the room, and the harsh tone of those people used when they took him back. His expression was one of fear when he looked at Chen Feng, but even more so, it was one of intense emotion. If that person really was his friend, then no matter what he did, he would get him out of that place. No matter what, he was his friend, that place was too dangerous. He only glanced at Chen Feng again, hesitating for a moment. "Did you just say you saw my friend there? If that really is my friend, why aren't you coming with me to find him? If we can find him, this whole thing will be resolved right now. Anyway, tell me where he is first." He looked at Chen Feng anxiously, desperate to find his friend's whereabouts. Unable to pinpoint the location himself, he could only rely on Chen Feng, hoping for the answer, especially since he had already told Chen Feng his friend's location. However, Chen Feng remained silent, seemingly unwilling to reveal the truth. He hesitated, pondering how to resolve the situation. Looking at Chen Feng, he thought, "You're so capable, you can definitely tell me, right? You can definitely get my friend to come out, right? Why is he alone in that place? Can you tell me? I need to know where he is," Lu Tai said to Chen Feng, but Chen Feng, hearing this, couldn't bring himself to bring up anything else. He didn't want to encounter any further trouble, but he had no other choice. He looked at his friend again, also trying to figure out how to resolve the situation. But now that things have come to this, it seems there really is no other way. He himself is also thinking about what to do, but Chen Feng can't tell Lu Shi about this. It would be too dangerous for Lu Shi to go there alone. "It's not that I don't want to tell you now, but it's too dangerous. I can't tell you until we can confirm where your friend is." And now, since things have come to this, I have nothing to say to you. I can't let you go there right now." Lu Shi was stunned. He hadn't expected to hear such words from Chen Feng. He thought Chen Feng would at least be willing to help them solve these problems. He hadn't expected Chen Feng to say this now. His meaning was clear, he couldn't help him at this time. He looked at Chen Feng in disbelief. He thought Chen Feng was always willing to help others, but now his friend had been taken to such a dangerous place, and Chen Feng might be the one who witnessed it. Why wasn't he willing to help him now? He suddenly thought of something else. Why was Chen Feng so clear that the person was his friend? It could only be because Chen Feng had witnessed his friend being taken away by those people. His gaze towards Chen Feng was filled with surprise. He assumed Chen Feng would definitely know. He thought Chen Feng would be willing to help him in such situations, but why didn't he help him if he had actually encountered his friend? Why did he tell him to calm down? He wondered what if things weren't like this? So he looked at Chen Feng, thinking about these things. Regardless of Chen Feng's true intentions, things had come to this point, and he decided to tell him. He didn't want things to turn out this way, so he hesitated slightly. After a moment, he looked at Chen Feng again, wanting him to confirm that this matter had nothing to do with Chen Feng. If it wasn't related to him, he certainly wouldn't say anything more at this moment. How could you be so sure that person was my friend? So you actually saw him just now, didn't you? You did see my friend, but you didn't help him, did you? Why did you do it this way? Why weren't you willing to resolve these things at this time? Chapter 344 Impulse. He was watching them, pondering how to resolve the situation. Looking at Chen Feng, he wondered what he would say if Chen Feng hadn't helped his friend. Chen Feng hesitated, looking at him first. If I had rushed out when I saw your friend, we would both be in danger. Have you considered other things? What if we were both in danger? How would we resolve this? He said. He then explained these things to the other man, who hesitated, unsure how to bring it up. He was unsure what Chen Feng meant. He hesitated again when Chen Feng mentioned what would happen if their identities were exposed. He quickly realized that if his friend was in danger, he couldn't forgive himself and felt their actions were understandable. He felt that if they were discovered by those people, what harm could they possibly do to them, given the strength of those who entered the village? He looked at Chen Feng with this thought in mind, and without hesitation, spoke directly to him. Even if those people discover our identities, what's the big deal? Your strength is so great, as long as you're here, you can definitely handle them. Actually, it's because you're unwilling to help my old woman. If you were truly willing, you wouldn't have encountered this situation. Chen Feng was silent for a moment after hearing this. He hadn't expected him to think this way. Actually, it wasn't that simple. It was their current thinking that to resolve these issues, they should consider other things. So, he looked at this person, hesitating for a while, but now that things had come to this, he decided to talk to him again, and moved closer. Kunming also looked at this person, and as he spoke the same words to Lu Tai, he felt a little surprised for some reason. It seemed Lu Shi cared more about his friend, but Chen Feng had come here to find out what the system was trying to do. The person with the system could cultivate here, in a completely different way. There was no spiritual energy here at all. He told Lu Shi directly. Let me tell you something else, Chen Feng said. There are many people here like your friend. They were brought here by those people, and they were harmed. But if our identities are discovered by those people, I won't be able to find them. Lu Shi looked at Chen Feng, seemingly wanting to say something, but Chen Feng said he didn't want to talk and just wanted him to be quiet. Hearing Chen Feng's words, Lu Shi hesitated. Chen Feng just looked at him again. He didn't want to criticize him, but he hadn't expected him to expose his identity for his friend's sake. But there were so many other people here, they hadn't done anything wrong, so why should they be in danger? So at that moment, he looked at him and wondered why those people had to face the same danger as them. He hesitated for a while because of this, so he looked at his face again and thought about what was going on. Then he spoke to him directly at that moment. Then let's talk about something else now. What if you learned something else, but your friend is in danger here? What about the others? They could have gotten our help, but because of your impulsiveness, they've been captured. Lu Shi hesitated for a moment, pondering what to do. But at this point, he couldn't just do whatever he wanted. He could only stay and watch them. He looked at them again, thinking about it. He looked at Chen Feng, knowing he was angry at what Chen Feng had said. He was only worried about his friend, not wanting him to be in danger. But it had turned out this way. What could have been resolved had become this. He hadn't meant to say those things. Looking at Chen Feng again, he realized Chen Feng was right. He hadn't intended for anyone to be harmed. Wang Zai hadn't mentioned this matter when Chen Feng and Lu Lin were talking. He never interrupted them at that time, but simply stood aside and watched them. Or rather, he had nothing to say to them. After all, it was their own business, and what happened to Lu Shi was none of his concern. Chen Feng looked at Lu Shi. He hadn't wanted to talk to him earlier, but he couldn't just let him go looking for his friend. He understood that Lu Shi was worried about his friend being in danger, but he couldn't allow everyone here to face further danger at this time. That was what he couldn't allow right now. So even though he was angry about this earlier, even though he didn't want to hear anything Lu Shi said, he had to stop him first. Lu Shi was somewhat unhappy, but he could only sit down at this moment. He looked at Yishen and said somewhat flusteredly, "So what am I supposed to do now? That person really is my friend, but he's in danger there, and all I can do is watch him suffer. I can't do anything to help him. What should I do now? Will I ever be able to find my friend again? What will these people in this place do to hurt him?" If you are listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means it was downloaded and re-uploaded without effort. We warmly invite you to visit our channel, Fanfic World. There you will find the original version of this story and many other novels of various genres. We look forward to seeing you dive into a world of incredible novels. Chapter 345 Awareness. He spoke to Chen Feng at that moment, genuinely feeling helpless and frightened by the situation. However, Chen Feng had nothing to say. Even now, he couldn't guarantee his friend wouldn't suffer further harm. In fact, by the time he found his friend, he might already be dead. He knew from experience that cultivators were capable of such things, especially those dedicated to cultivation. They were capable of anything. Looking at the person before him, he felt helpless. They hadn't expected such people to exist here. Not even Yi Xian had anticipated they could use this method to create spiritual energy in this place, allowing them to cultivate. The system hadn't told him about this either, so Chen Feng was angry. He had always thought the system was quite discerning. Even if they could resolve personal grudges, they wouldn't use innocent people for cultivation. Feeling helpless, he could only speak to them at this moment. "You really need to calm down here. As for your friend, all I can say is that I'll do my best to find him from that place and prevent him from being hurt by those people again. And there are many others here, perhaps in the place where he's being held, there are many people like him." Hearing this, Lu Tai was stunned. He hadn't expected Yi Shen to say something like this. If there were really so many people being hurt there, what reason did he have to help his friend at this time? Thinking this, he didn't feel comfortable saying anything more to Chen Feng. He hadn't expected the people here to be like this. When he first entered, he thought they were just deceiving these people, getting them what they needed. But now they understood that what they truly needed was something those people couldn't afford to give. I originally thought they were just deceiving him, giving him things those people needed, but not wanting them to become stronger. But I didn't expect these people to do such a thing. Not only did they get what they needed, but they also hurt ordinary people, and those people didn't understand anything about why they were doing this. Lu Shi looked at Chen Feng at this moment, genuinely angry about the situation. Chen Feng, however, remained silent, unable to explain. Perhaps they were similar, both possessing systems. What difference was there? In their eyes, these people were just ordinary folks, indifferent to the dangers they faced. Chen Feng looked at him helplessly, unsure what to say. He needed to find another solution. He watched them, pondering how to resolve the situation, but it seemed impossible. He saw them heading in another direction, perhaps to avoid further trouble. Lu Shi was trying to figure out how to tell his friends and acquaintances about his predicament, a situation he dared not even consider. He moved a little closer to Chen Feng. He didn't want to ask Wang Zai about this now. After all, Chen Feng was the one who brought him from that village. Without Chen Feng, he wasn't sure if he would have ended up here with those people. He looked at Chen Feng and finally spoke. "Can you tell me how these people cultivate? Why are they trapping my friends here? What are they planning to do? Just tell me that. I don't want to know anything else." Chen Feng could sense that he had broken a bone, but he couldn't tell him. How could he tell him about those people's purpose? Using ordinary people to cultivate didn't exist in their benevolent world. They didn't understand things like spirituality. Chen Feng looked at him, unable to explain what spirituality was. If he hadn't been to that world, he wouldn't be sure either. So, Chen Feng could only look at him helplessly. He really had nothing to say to him, so he simply looked at him. He simply looked at him, having nothing to say. Even if he really wanted to know, he had nothing to say. He couldn't let him discover these things, at least not now. He could find a way to bring his friend out. He also wanted to destroy this place. He couldn't let this person hurt more people. These people came here only to become stronger. They shouldn't be harmed like this, becoming tools for these people's cultivation. He thought this with some helplessness, glancing in that direction again. Chen Feng also looked at Wang Zai at this moment. He found Wang Zai's current behavior strange. He didn't seem frightened by those people's actions. If it were before, he could understand that he was genuinely not afraid, but now he couldn't understand his actions. He originally thought that Lu Shi and the others must have seen such people before, but after learning from the system and Lu Shi's behavior, he understood that there was no spiritual energy in this world, and no one cultivated like this. So why wasn't he afraid? He hesitated for a moment, then looked at Wang Zai first, and then spoke to him. I'm not sure what you're thinking this time, but you need to be extra careful at this time. We can't be sure what else is here, and if we encounter danger here again, there really won't be any other way. So you need to be careful no matter what. Chapter 346 Monster. As he spoke, he looked at him and told him everything. He didn't want this to happen, and he didn't want to doubt Wang Zai at this moment. After all, they had come to this place together and encountered danger together. He didn't want to doubt him now, but for the sake of everyone here, he had to do this. However, anyone with a system could potentially do such a thing. Chen Feng was certain he hadn't done it, but what about Li Zhu? He couldn't be sure Wang Zai wasn't that person. What if he deliberately lured them here? Chen Feng had learned from the system that eliminating a system owner would allow their system to upgrade. So, if he was only doing these things to lure him out, and if he stopped after being lured out, Chen Feng would be somewhat happy. But what if he continued? These were things Chen Feng dared not think about. He glanced in their direction. Now, no matter what, he had to resolve this matter and prevent anyone from approaching this place, especially those with systems. Lu Shi was still here, and around them were many others like Lu Shi who wanted to become stronger, who had been tricked into coming here. If they hadn't tricked him into coming here, none of this would have happened. And the person who was injured, it seems he was only trying to become stronger. Chen Feng looked at Lu Shi, who also seemed surprised by these developments. He patted Lu Shi on the shoulder and said, I promise you one thing. No matter what, I'll get your friend out of there as soon as possible. But if he's already been dealt with by the time I get there, then I won't be able to do anything else. They must have other motives for coming out this time. We still have a way to find out where he was taken. Lu Shi looked at Chen Feng with surprise. He hadn't expected him to be willing to help him in this matter, but he immediately realized how dangerous it was. If Chen Feng helped him solve this problem, he himself would face many dangers. He looked at Chen Feng, hesitating. His hesitation stemmed from his own concerns. If Chen Feng helped them solve the problem, but he himself was in danger, how could he become stronger? There was no one as strong as Chen Feng anymore, a fact he himself was well aware of. He couldn't find anyone as capable as Xiang, but if he didn't let Chen Feng go, his friend would be in danger, which was something he couldn't accept. That's why he looked at Shen again, thinking about the things that were happening and how he should talk to Chen Feng. But if that's the case, won't you be in danger right now? You won't be fighting them head-on, right? Because you can't just easily defeat them right now. If that's the case, then you shouldn't go. I really want my friend to stay out of danger, but I don't want you to be in this situation either. He watched as Chen Feng explained his thoughts. Chen Feng fell silent upon hearing this. He wasn't sure how to address the matter, but since it had already come to this point, he could only smile at him again, and then smile at Lu Shi. He was grateful that Lu Shi was still willing to think of him at this time. However, it was just about bringing someone out. He couldn't guarantee anything else, but he could manage this. He smiled at Lu Shi again, and then didn't hesitate any longer. What worried him most now was Li Zhu. He had always suspected that Wang Zai possessed another system, and now it seemed very likely that was the case. Since that was the case, he had to find a way to resolve this matter. So, he looked at Lu Shi and suddenly smiled at him. When I get there, I'll be entrusting Lu Shi to you for now. No matter what, you need to keep an eye on him for me. I don't want him to be taken away by them after I bring him out. You know very well that those people brought him here not just for some benefits, but for other reasons. He doesn't seem to understand the situation yet, and he can't let Wang Zai discover he possesses a system. Although Wang Zai might have already sensed something, at least he hasn't brought it up directly. This way, he might still be able to resolve the matter. He'll just keep an eye on him and think about what they've encountered. Because there's still a chance to resolve this, he doesn't need to reveal everything now. He can still keep things from them for a while. He can deal with these issues once he understands what he wants to know. He glanced at Wang Zai again, who smiled at Yushin, seemingly agreeing to Chen Feng's request, but without directly stating his willingness. Chen Feng understood this. Such people were inherently wary, and unsure if Yushin was sent from the other side. He dared not take the risk. This was why he hadn't revealed his identity. If it were simply a matter of finding him, he could have easily told him the whole story. But now, the situation was uncertain. Thinking this, Chen Feng decided to consult the system again to understand how to deal with the system owner. Chen Feng had promised Lu Tai to find his friend because he needed to resolve the system issue quickly. He felt even more anxious than before, and looked at Wang Zai again. This time, he had to find a way to eliminate the system owner first, otherwise, the situation was far too dangerous. As for Wang Zai, Chen Feng was now genuinely suspicious of him. Even though he didn't possess the system, he didn't know what might happen when those people became stronger. He couldn't possibly remain so indifferent when he saw them encounter such a situation. So, he looked at Wang Zai and spoke directly to him. Please make preparations now. We'll definitely be heading over there soon. No matter what happens, I must deal with that monster first, and those who want to do those things, I won't let them get away with it now. Please don't mind this, and keep an eye on Lu Shi for me. Chapter 347 Escape. Hearing this, Wang Zai smiled at Chen Feng. Chen Feng's system, however, seemed anxious. It found Chen Feng's actions strange. It had never been so anxious before. It hesitated for a moment, genuinely puzzled as to why Chen Feng was so eager to deal with a person with a system. Previously, it had felt somewhat pleased, but hearing their conversation only deepened its confusion. The system wanted to understand why Chen Feng needed to know these things, but Chen Feng didn't offer any further explanation. Of course, it had its reasons. It hadn't considered these matters, yet it needed to find a way to resolve them. Those monsters were capable of anything. Yushin's urgency in dealing with a person with a system stemmed largely from the fact that those with systems and the ability to cultivate could rapidly increase their strength. Especially since the cultivator they encountered this time used such methods, becoming stronger was simply a matter of wishful thinking for him. If he didn't act quickly, they would be even less able to resolve the situation once he became stronger, leaving the system feeling helpless. Before you can figure out that person's strength, I don't recommend you go looking for him right now. It's too dangerous. Why rush to find him? You'll definitely find a way to learn more about these things later. If you go out now, it's very likely that your identity will be exposed. Chen Feng's system reminded him of these things first, but Chen Feng felt helpless upon hearing this. It wasn't that he looked down on the system, but he himself was well aware of these matters. However, he had to follow these instructions now, otherwise he didn't want to encounter those people again. He was well aware that this matter was extremely dangerous, and of course, he didn't want to be in danger. But since he had encountered these things, he had to find a way to solve them first. If he didn't find a way to solve them, it would be truly too dangerous, and it would be even more dangerous if that person became stronger. Don't try to persuade me now. Don't you know what that person is? He can cultivate immortality and utilize spiritual energy. If he becomes stronger using this method, who here could possibly defeat him? These places don't necessarily lack spiritual energy. This was Chen Feng's most pressing concern. His system hadn't allowed him to cultivate immortality in this place, so he didn't know if spiritual energy existed here. But since he had gained wisdom from these ordinary people deliberately harming them, it wasn't impossible for him to cultivate again at this time. That's why Chen Feng needed to find a way to resolve these issues. He knew he had no room for hesitation, and his system seemed to understand his thoughts, especially after hearing Chen Feng's words. The system instructed him to ensure Lu Tai wasn't in danger during this mission. As for the rest, do your best. I'll demonstrate what you're doing to prevent others with the system from noticing your presence. But here's a warning, the person next to you named Wang Zai is very dangerous. Be careful. The system's sudden message surprised Chen Feng. He had initially thought it was just an ordinary system, but now it seemed things were different. However, He still had many things to resolve, so he moved in another direction. It was something he had to do. He felt somewhat helpless, but given what had happened, what was there to hesitate about? He might as well go in that direction and see what else he could do. He was willing to do everything he could, as long as it was something he could. Thinking this, he prepared to leave immediately, but Lu-Shi suddenly stopped him. "You're going to find those people now? Isn't that too dangerous? I want to find a way to resolve this, but I don't want you to be in danger because of this. If you're in danger because of me, I definitely won't be able to forgive myself." He looked at Chen Feng and said this. Chen Feng smiled helplessly. He had considered resolving the situation, but as Lu-Shi said, given what had happened, what was there to hesitate about? They had to find a way to resolve it. Chen Feng had considered what Lu-Shi had told him. This matter was indeed dangerous, but now was not the time for him to fear danger. If he didn't stop that person from gaining power and becoming stronger through this method, he would be even less likely to resolve the situation. He looked at Lu-Shi with some helplessness, because he couldn't tell Lu-Shi that these people were cultivators and therefore possessed great strength. He also couldn't explain why they had brought these people here in the first place. Perhaps they possessed something they needed. Otherwise, these people wouldn't risk telling him this at this time, especially given the hints from Chen Feng's system. Chen Feng realized that it was possible that while they couldn't defeat these powerful individuals, someone else might obtain the system. Just like his system had told him before, if he could obtain someone else's system, his own system could upgrade it this time. He also found it strange that he would rather just complete the original task than encounter these kinds of things again. He felt helpless about the situation and could only try to find a solution. He had to watch over them, feeling helpless but having no other way to resolve it. After a moment's hesitation, he spoke to Wang Zai and Lu Tai again. "I'm going out now. You two wait a little while. If you haven't seen me return by the time these people start moving, Wang Zai, you immediately take Lu Tai and escape. We don't know what's here, and I can't let you stay in such a dangerous place any longer." Chapter 348 Punishment. Don't stand up immediately upon hearing this, wanting to argue with Chen Feng about this matter. He didn't want Chen Feng to do such a dangerous thing, but Chen Feng just looked at him. He knew very well that he was anxious about his situation, but there was no need to be like that now, as long as they were safe. "I don't have much to say now, I'll just tell you what happened. Anyway, it's already come to this point, so you all need to be careful. I have some things to take care of. I need to find those people and find out why they did these things. So if I'm not there yet, you should leave." Of course, leave meant leaving this place directly, but Lu-Shi was unwilling to do that. He didn't want Yushen to be in danger at this time, which is why he told them this. But then he had other things to figure out, and at this moment, he looked at them again. After he looked at them again and said these words, Wang Zai didn't say anything more to him. Lu-Shi was still like this. It seemed that he was really angry this time. After all, the person who was injured was his friend, and there was actually not much connection between him and Chen Feng and the others. Chen Feng's willingness to help that person was solely due to Lu-Shi's influence, regardless of the person's abilities. Lu-Shi hesitated for a moment, glancing at Chen Feng before saying nothing more. "How can you let yourself do something so dangerous? You should know very well what they're using. This matter is already very dangerous, and you still dare to do it now. It's too risky. Perhaps you should reconsider? Maybe it's not necessary to do it this way." Lu-Shi looked at Chen Feng, still feeling that Chen Feng didn't necessarily have to do those things. Chen Feng smiled helplessly at him. This wasn't something he could do on his own. Even if he thought of these things, he wouldn't actually do them the way they wanted. He just looked at him again. He should be happy that his companions had resolved these matters, but now they were facing these problems. He had to find a way to solve them. As for Su Bao, as Chen Feng said, he was the system's designated mission participant and was very likely the protagonist of this place. That's why he couldn't afford to be harmed here, otherwise the world would disappear. Hearing this, he didn't hesitate any longer. He said Lu Tai couldn't go to that place with him, and no matter what, he couldn't go. "Don't try to persuade me now. I said you can't go there, and no matter what reason you give, you can't go. Just stay here for now. Once this matter is resolved, we'll figure out a way to solve it. Don't say anything more." After Chen Feng finished speaking, he left. Lu-Shi wanted to follow, but Chen Feng immediately set up a barrier, trapping him and Wang Zai there. Lu-Shi looked at Wang Zai anxiously. He truly couldn't solve this problem. He wondered if Wang Zai had a way to get out of this place. He wanted to go to those places with Chen Feng. He couldn't let Yushin encounter those dangers alone. Just then, he looked at Wang Zai, wanting to say something. He felt Wang Zai definitely had a way to get out of this place. Wang Zai saw his eyes and understood what he was thinking. He just wanted him to take him out of this place. But he couldn't do that because it was Chen Feng's doing, so they couldn't solve it. He looked at him helplessly. The matter was indeed unsolvable. They weren't sure if Chen Feng had anything else to say. And this place was a shortcut set up by Chen Feng. He had already seen that Chen Feng's strength far surpassed theirs. He couldn't possibly get out of here. Even Lu Tai was helpless against him. He could certainly sense how anxious Lu Tai was, but he had no way to get him out of there. He could only wait for Chen Feng to find them after learning what had happened. Chen Feng, meanwhile, secretly made his way back in the same direction, leaving something with the person they had captured, Lu Shi's friend. He wanted to give Chen Feng something to help him find them. He didn't want things to be like this, but he had no other choice. It wasn't all for Lu Shi. He also didn't want that person to become stronger. If that person became stronger, they would have no chance of defeating him. Those cultivators were practically invincible in this world, and he hadn't expected to encounter such a person. Even if the system had brought him here, it should only have provided them with a means to cultivate here, not allowed him to bring things that didn't exist here. He felt something was strange and wanted to directly contact the system to find out what was going on. But he decided to see the person first and then figure out how to resolve everything. Since he was already here, he might as well figure out what was happening first and then think of ways to solve all the problems he had encountered. Chen Feng walked over to the place he had sensed earlier. Regardless of what was there, since he had promised that person, he could help Lu resolve this matter. He also wanted to understand why these people were doing what they did. It couldn't just be a coincidence. And those people, they watched as people they knew were harmed and used for cultivation, yet they showed no interest or intention to help. This puzzled Yushin. He also thought that those who entered this place seeking strength probably hadn't expected to encounter such things. Why don't you hurry over here? This matter needs to be resolved quickly. How did that person escape? If we can't solve this, we'll all be punished. After all, that person escaped right before our eyes. I also want to know what happened. Chapter 349 Punishment. Just then, someone approached this area, and Chen Feng immediately hid. He wanted to understand what was going on, so he hid in another direction. He only stopped when the person reached Chen Feng's side, seemingly deep in thought. Because Chen Feng now had a very secluded spot, they couldn't hear what he was saying. After leading them to hide, Chen Feng pondered the situation. Although he didn't know what else to say to them, he overheard them talking. Regardless of how we proceed, we need to figure out a solution first. Since those people have done these things, we need to think of ways to stop them. I don't want anyone to encounter any further danger at this time. In any case, we need to be more vigilant. Chen Feng found this somewhat strange. They were just staying here watching those people. What kind of danger could they possibly encounter? In fact, he himself was somewhat unwilling to believe what they were saying. At this moment, he looked at the people here and thought about these matters. In any case, we need to find a solution to this matter. If those people really escape again, all of us here will be in real danger. It was clearly stated at the time that if those people escaped, we would be the ones punished. After all, they chose to enter this place themselves. Why should they try to escape? When he said this, the person who said these words seemed somewhat disdainful. Chen Feng felt angry when he heard this. They were the ones who wanted to be led to that place, and they deliberately put those people in danger. If they had really explained to them what this place was for, how could anyone have entered this place? Chen Feng thought for a moment. If he brought the people out this time, it would definitely alert them at this moment. However, he didn't want these people to discover his identity right away, so he disguised himself before bringing the people who had spoken earlier to him. They were still a little afraid of the guards seeing Chen Feng. Of course, at first, the two men looked at Chen Feng with disdain. They thought Chen Feng was just like the ordinary people here, just wanting to know how to become stronger. They looked at Yushin and thought they could threaten him with something. They thought they could threaten Chen Feng to release them, because when Chen Feng approached them, he used the method to bind them here. Now Chen Feng was just looking at them. He didn't know what these people's purpose was. But then Chen Feng looked at them directly and spoke to them threateningly. What did you mean by what you just said? I want you to tell me now. I've never seen such a thing before, so I don't know what it is. If you can't tell me this, I'll just end it now. Now I want you to tell me where those people are being held." Those captured by Lu Chen were visibly frightened. They hadn't expected him to be so powerful, trapping them here. Although they wanted to find someone to deal with Chen Feng, they dared not risk it at this moment. Chen Feng might actually do something to harm them. They didn't dare say anything more. Chen Feng was capable of anything, and they didn't dare take the risk now. They'd wait until Chen Feng figured out a solution, then think about what else they could say to him. They just glanced at Chen Feng again. They were genuinely frightened by Chen Feng. Today, Chen Feng wanted to know where those people were being held, and even if they were unwilling, they had to be told first. As for punishment, they didn't know what kind of punishment they would receive, but it was much better than being dealt with here. They pointed in that direction with trembling hands. "It's in that place. All those who entered here and were chosen were taken there, but we don't know what's inside. We'll have to wait and see." There were guards outside, preventing anyone from leaving. As for where those who were brought out were taken, we don't know. They were a little scared as they spoke, looking at Chen Feng, afraid that Ji Shen might get angry and deal with them directly. But Chen Feng just glanced at them. There was nothing to say to them. He just needed to look in another direction to find out more. He continued looking in that direction, and there were still many things he didn't understand. The direction they told him was completely different from the place the people there were in. This other direction struck him as very strange. It wasn't the same place he had met before, the place where he had obtained spiritual energy and cultivated. So what was different here? He looked again, and he could see that the two of them were truly afraid. Chen Feng was also angry. They were afraid now, but when they were hurting innocent people with those people, why weren't they afraid? Chen Feng looked at them at that moment. He was angry about this, but he really had nothing to say to them. It's impossible to resolve this directly at this moment. If these people did that, how would he be any different from the person who used them for cultivation? However, these people truly need to be punished at this time. Having done these things here, they couldn't possibly be unaware of what those people would encounter, but they hadn't mentioned it to them beforehand. Since that's the case, let those who were harmed punish them. He only needs to keep them here for now. Chen Feng then looked at them again. "You stay here now. It's best not to tell anyone what happened to Chen Wei this time. If you tell others, before you explain, before I'm caught, I can easily deal with you. I can still manage that." He glanced at them as he said this. They felt a little scared upon hearing this and hesitated for a moment. They remembered that when Chen Feng stopped them earlier, no one around had noticed anything, which only showed Chen Feng's strength. Of course, they didn't dare to take the risk at this moment. Chapter 350 Solution. Then I won't talk about this anymore, and I won't bring it up again at this time. We also won't tell anyone you've been here. You can do whatever you want, we won't stop you now. If you want to go that place, we can help you. They looked at Chen Feng, somewhat anxiously telling him this. Rather than letting Chen Feng figure it out later, they preferred to tell him the situation themselves now. Chen Feng smiled at them, seemingly more clear-headed than they thought. But now Chen Feng didn't want to pay attention to them. He knocked these people unconscious and headed towards the direction they had told him. He needed to find out what was there, why they had brought people there, and what the connection was between that person's cultivation, where they obtained their spiritual energy, and so on. Thinking of this, he moved closer in that direction. In any case, he had to resolve these matters now to prevent anyone from being in danger. He needed to find a way to resolve these issues, so he continued moving closer. No matter what, he had to find a solution. He continued moving in that direction, but when he got there, he found it was no different from where they were before. It was just like their usual place. He went closer to the supermarket and overheard someone speaking to the guards outside, sounding frightened. "Can you please send us out now? Everyone who comes in here will be dealt with." "What have we done? We just wanted to become stronger. We just didn't want anyone around us to be hurt anymore. Why are you keeping us trapped here? What do you want to do at this time?" Chen Feng tried to move closer. As soon as he got there, he heard someone speaking in fear. He was stunned for a moment, then looked at the guards standing outside. He thought they would at least be somewhat restrained, but they didn't seem to care at all. What angered Chen Feng the most was that those people actually laughed at this moment. Chen Feng had heard them as he approached, because they laughed at what they were saying. Then Chen Feng heard them relentlessly telling the others, "You think you can get out of here at this time? Don't you know what you've been through? I have nothing to say to you. Things are indeed very dangerous lately, but I'm not willing to help you anymore. You can figure out how to solve these problems yourselves." As he said this, he even smiled smugly. What did it matter to him what these people had gone through? He was just proud of it. He felt they deserved this punishment because they were the ones who wanted to enter this place. Chen Feng was furious. But Chen Feng had no way to solve these problems. These people were capable of anything, and what could they do at this time? Chen Feng looked at them and thought about the current situation, trying to figure out how to get into this place and bring them out. The guards then looked at the people inside begging them to let them out. They certainly couldn't do that, because it was clear that the guards would be punished if these people escaped. But in reality, the guards spoke to them again at this moment. To enter this place, you must do it yourselves. I don't know what dangers you'll encounter, but you should know what happened to the escapee. He's among you now, you should think about how to help him. He smiled smugly as he said this. Chen Feng understood immediately. The escapee they were talking about was Lu Shi's friend. He needed to find a way to bring him out of that place, as well as all the people inside. He wondered what they had all done. What had those who imprisoned them done to make them so afraid? Or did they know that human cultivation could do anything to harm them? He found it strange and wanted to understand what had happened to these people. If they hadn't actually been harmed, they wouldn't seem so afraid. Thinking about this, Chen Feng also felt puzzled. He looked in that direction again, hesitating. Should he go in now to bring the person out, or return to his own place first? He thought about the incident again. The people he'd knocked unconscious, even if they'd been seen unconscious before, people wouldn't believe them because of what they'd done. But Chen Feng needed to figure out what to do next. Standing outside, he hesitated, wondering whether to go back and explain things to Wang Zai and the others. He'd come here at this time, and everyone was being taken out now. But Chen Feng felt he needed to discuss things with him, so he headed towards the place they'd been standing. He wanted to discuss things with them, to have them prepare so they could find a way out. But when he reached their previous spot, he saw no one there. He immediately went inside. "Lu Shi, Wang Zai, where are you? I need to discuss something with you. Don't stay here, regardless of whether you're resting or not. Come out for a bit, I need to discuss something with you." After saying that, Chen Feng walked towards that place. He thought they should be inside, but when he actually entered, he found no one there. Lu Tai and Wang Zai were nowhere to be seen. His expression immediately changed. Then, he heard some noise. Chen Feng hid somewhere, not because he was afraid of being captured, but because he needed to find out from what they were saying where Lu Tai and Wang Zai had been taken. Then, someone walked in. End of this chapter. Thank you so much for reading until the end. Don't forget to give it a like. Looking for more exclusive content and immediate access? Subscribe to our Patreon. Remember, every like, subscription or donation encourages us to continue. Thank you all, see you in the next video.